animal handling and facility design. And but I'm going to share some of the stuff what we do today and some of the things that I've gotten to do, the privilege to do, honestly. I never thought that in vet school that I would be doing this. But I also never thought my animal behavior class at University of Nebraska at Kearney, when I did my little research project on behavior, I picked cattle to go study out in the normal environment of pastures and so forth, while everybody else was looking at sandhill cranes and box turtles and squirrels and whatnot. I never thought that then I'd meet Bud Williams, who would kind of transform my life and transform how I do things today, from handling and designs and so forth. So I'm going to talk a little bit just about designing facilities with the end in mind. And I think last year I talked a little bit about facilities at one of the meetings we did in Sioux City, I think. But I changed that a little bit because there's some different designs that I do today. A couple years ago, I was pretty severely injured. I'm type 1 diabetic, became a type 1 late in life, 35 years old, and didn't take care of myself a couple years ago in July, and passed out on a horse in the middle of a pasture and completely shattered my tibia. Basically did a bilateral tibial plateau fracture, and then shattered it a third of the way down. So there's 3 plates in it today, and then literally a year and 2 days after that, I snapped my femur. I had a heifer get me inside of a feed bunk, and she decided to manipulate my leg, and she snapped this femur on the same leg. So that leg just is heavy when I walk. And I go to the airports, and then I'm always dinging as I'm going through, and I just look at them. I go, oh, like I'm full of titanium. You can shoot me whatever, but shooting this leg, okay, shoot the right. So, but when I do facilities today, because of that, I've added in a lot more safety features. One of the things that I realized is that I always think to myself, why don't people come to agriculture today? And I was literally down in Mississippi State last week designing facilities for them and their vet school down there. And we had that conversation. Why don't young people come into agriculture? And one, it's hard work, because we make it hard. And a lot of times because of the facility we give them to actually process cattle. So that's their first impression of livestock is facilities they have to work in. And quite honestly, I told them down there, I said, I had to do this today and start over. I'd look at y'all and go, I'm going to go drive a tractor that drives itself or just robotically move it. I mean, that's a hell of a lot easier than get pinned in a corral because there's no escape gate or no way to get out, right? So that's what I do today. So but when we do facilities, one of the first slides is we go do things is people ask, they want the perfect facility. And I'm always looking at that going, the reason this slide is blank is because I don't know what the perfect facility is. I just know that over the since I've been designing facilities since probably about 2005, I don't know what that looks like today, honestly, because even in my own eyes, it's ever changing. I mean, when I did Mississippi State's here this last week, I literally changed it 3 times in the process of designing it. And that was me. That's not them critiquing it and they don't like something. That's just me saying, yeah, I don't like the way that looks. So I'm gonna change it up. And I always look at flow and how I interpret flow on paper and what I think is going to be the absolute best. Because what I'm actually looking for, pure voluntary motion cattle. I don't want there to have to be you pushing them or yelling or screaming, hot shotting or anything. I want it to be just pure voluntary motion. I want it to be fun, but I also want it to be safe. And so when I look at that stuff, why does planning matter? And this is what I told them is that we can start planning this today, but it's going to take 2 years to build it. And in 2 years, I'm going to probably have changed something in what I'm in terms of I'm designing at that time. So it's literally you're going to sit there and you're going to build what I designed 2 years ago, and I'm going to have transformed it to something different. And so planning is important, but one of the biggest reasons for planning is that everything costs more. you know, since 2019, I've looked at different costs from concrete to iron to all the different things, and everything's almost double in price. And if you're doing anything with electrical, like if we're doing steam flakers and stuff like that, we have to add a generator box and all that stuff. I mean, heck, we're a year and a half out on some of that stuff still today. Three-phase wire, I mean, try to find it hard, especially if you need a lot of it. You have to plan. You can't just say, well, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to go build tomorrow. Okay, because that's unless it's with you have the post and pipe ready. That might be stuff that you bought prior. So, and so I think that's important. These are kind of the sticker shock things. So truckload of 2 7/8" drill stem pipe. 2018 we were $11,000. 2023 we're $20,000. Okay. 50 feet of CMP culverts, 18-inch diameter, 1,200 in 2018, 2,300 today. 10 cubic yards of 3,500 PSI concrete, $900 in 2018, $1,400 today. That's just facts. Right? What I challenge us in this room is have we raised our prices according to inflation? And I always ask this to the pharmaceutical companies: why do you keep low? I mean, they are literally the only ones that are dropping prices on vaccines and Draxxin and Macrocin and all the generics, right? I always ask us, how's that sustainable? And how are you training our clients? Training them that this animal health side is worth nothing. Don't do that to us. We're worth something. We need to inflate a little bit. I mean, I'll show you some stuff here in a little bit, what it costs. How many of y'all feed cattle or run feeders buying cattle today?
6 head count.
Yeah, absolutely. 6 head's a lot in terms of money, right? You're getting $2,400 a head going through the market. You know, and our projected price, hopefully going out, will be, we're hoping $2,800 to $3,000 a head. But I never thought in my life I'd see. When I was in Australia here in 2005, I was down there and we were working with Wagyu cattle, and honest to God, there was, you know, we were working with $5,000 animals. They were on feed for 400 some days, but I never thought in my life we'd ever see $3,000 fats in the US either. So just different. So prioritize projects. I think what that really means to me is that you know, prioritize to the level of importance. And so this last year or this year, we've been looking at purchasing a feed yard of our own, and mainly for research and for training and so forth. And as we do that, I already set out a new design, because I'm going to buy a fixer upper, or we're going to build it ourselves. And so the fixer upper seems like the best option right at the moment. So, but when I look at things, this is a research feed yard over in Cairo, Nebraska for us. This yard, I can't remember if I have slides of it from the past, but in like 2000, this is like about a 1,200 head yard total. And it literally had, there were some pins here that were not like this. It had one large pin here that was about like this. It did have a little bit of a processing facility here. And then it had a couple big pins over on this side here. And that was it. And then when the son came back to the feed yard from college, he had in mind kind of that he wanted to expand, and he wanted to buy the feed yard from his dad. And I said, asked him, you know, what do you want to do? So all the way back then, we were ready to prioritize things. So he said specifically, I want to be able to run this. I want to have about between a 3,500 to 5,000 head yard. Currently today it's 3,500. However, he is pouring RCC in all the pins. So all the pins, probably in the next month, will all be poured concrete. And we will expand that facility to about 5,000 head in the same footprint without building more pins. Okay. So, but he said back then he wanted to make sure that he had that size of a yard, and he wanted to do it with 1 to 2 people. I love that vision, right? he already envisioned back in 2000 that labor is going to be an issue. And the number one thing he says, I don't want to have to work with somebody else. I want to work with my sons and maybe their wives someday, but that's it. And so we designed it accordingly so that flow, you have this main alley right here that goes all the way over to this side. This alley, back alley goes here to there, up to the processing. This alley comes over here, crosses over, it comes over up here. Everything is one person. Pins are, at that time, were between 65 to 80 head pins. And the reason he wanted that, we were doing research. We were going to do research. And we wanted to make sure that we minimized a covariant, which is commingling. We knew we'd have to commingle off truck and randomize by truck, but we wanted, how many head can you put, how many 750 weights can you put in a truckload? Anybody know? About that many, exactly, 100%. So that was the thought process. To fill one replicate, we'd have 2 trucks. And you'd only commingle 2 get to that pin size. That minimizes health risk, other issues, and just eliminate a variant. Okay. That makes sense? So those are the things that we did back then already. I think when you talk about that, so when we did this is well, how are we going to make the feed mill? What needed to come first? Well, before we build all these pins, we got to build a feed mill. We got to feed the damn things, because once we have the pins and the pins built, we better be able to feed them. So that came first. Next was, well, before we have pins, we need to make sure that we have manure storage and all those things. So make sure you have manure storage. You needed dirt, dig dirt, put dirt in pins. The weird thing is now we hauled a lot of dirt to build these pins. Now we're hauling it out so we can pour concrete. So we're just the same thing in the world. And so over the transformer of this yard, literally about every 3 to 5 years, he's changing something in that yard. So that takes planning. Things to consider when designing. What do you exactly want? I always ask a ton of questions when I go into a facility, whether it's a vet clinic, like when I was down in Mississippi State, I was just designing an outpatient facility for the vet school. However, in that discussion, they started talking about, hey, we want to build a new large animal school. And can you do that? Yeah, absolutely. I'm just one little Pollock in the middle of Nebraska, but absolutely, I'm not afraid to do any of that stuff. I work with other engineers. I just don't do all the beautification stuff that the engineers and architects do, right? So that's for them to do. But if you need pins or facilities or office space, whatever stuff like that, yeah, I do that. I draw it out in lines. You're not going to like it all the time, but I can draw it out good enough so that an engineer of some sort, I can give it to them and they can take it. I am not an engineer. I always have to give all my drawings to engineers for final assessment. But my drawings are a lot cheaper than the engineers, I can tell you that. So I always ask, what do you all want in the process? Likes and dislikes of your current facilities. I think that's always important. You got to, and always go look at other people's facilities, whether it's vet clinics or feedlots or whatever it is. Go look at other people's stuff. Don't rely on one person to have the golden ticket as to what new technologies or things are out there. I think that's important. Where are the inefficiencies of the current facilities? Where do you perceive traffic jams? Today, some of the engineering firms like Sechi Agri Engineering that I work with, they actually do traffic maps for the feedlots. So that you have grain coming in, hay coming in, cattle going out, all that, and the feed trucks and all that. So they can actually sit there and look at cross points and understand exactly where everything's going to be and where the conundrums are going to be and how do we divert around conundrums and get around that so that it's not a problem. Traffic is an issue, especially during harvest. We're just entering into silage season here pretty soon. So go to feedlots or some of these ranches that are doing that. I mean, you'll see trucks zooming in and out. It'll be chaotic as heck for about 2 weeks, and then it's all over. It's just 2 weeks of hell, essentially. And then today, we always have to think about biosecurity. I think that's important. In Nebraska, we have what we call Nebraska Safe Beef Program, which is basically they come out and they actually, and I don't know if South Dakota do the same, where they actually come out and they design a layout for secure beef. And they've been doing it for our ranches and our feedlots. And it's a free service to our clients. But they basically make biosecurity plans for the yard, and they map it out. It's about a 5 to 10 page document at the end of it. But it basically gives you your borders and what would happen if there's ever a hoof and mouth disease and stuff like that. And today we think about that. Like we would never ever back up one. We would never ever, like if I was designing today, always feed would be over on one side and load out would be somewhere like where the trucks are never going to come in contact with any of this stuff here. They keep it all separate. They keep it on the edge. That stuff of being in the middle, the only thing that's in the middle is processing and hospitals. But loadouts, receiving, feedstuffs, all on the outside perimeters. We don't mess that up today. And then we have yards that'll come to me and they have a thought process in mind about where they want things. Usually I'm the bad person and they come in and I go, no, you don't want it there. They go, yeah, I do want it there. I'm like, no, you don't want it there. Then I make them think about why they don't want it there. Then I usually win on that deal. I'm like, you want to move cattle if we're in a hoof and mouth issue once we get clearance to move. You do not have your secure beef program and your biosecurity program in place, you will not move cattle. You like feeding cattle for a long period of time. Because the longer they're in that yard, more of them are going to die in that yard. That's just human and animal fact. We're always 1 second closer to death. Well, say, right? You might not want to die today, but you're 1 second closer to it. So just keep breathing. Okay. Biosecurity is important. Future expansion, always be thinking about the 5, 10, 20-year plan as we go through. This is a slide from Jacob Mayer. He's with Subsea Agri Engineering, and just giving some timelines as far as why we want to plan in the next 5 years. Preliminary designs typically take 2 to 3 months to get things done. Permitting, if we're doing any permitting, even with veg plants, like when I built the practice up in Ainsworth, Nebraska, that Dr. Sheree Stephen bought. When we built that, I mean, I still had to go through permitting and DEQ and all that stuff because I had animal waste. So they made me put in septic systems and register everything and whatnot. Some people get around that today, and I don't know how y'all get around it, but I couldn't get around it. They found me and they picked on me and they said, no, you're going to get permitted. So I had to go through all that phase. And that takes, because it's, I hate to say that, but because it's sometimes government, it gets put on the back burner if it's not a priority, right? So some Sand Hills Animal Health Centers is not a priority to something else going on in the state government at the time. So it does take 4 to 6 months sometimes on those deals. So, and I'm not blaming them. That's just another fact. So it just takes time. So plan it for you. Cost wise, getting bids and all that stuff out, I think that's important. Construction will usually take 3 to 9 months once it starts. One thing I found with construction guys, they've gotten worse, and there's probably people maybe here that I got a son in construction and I give them a hard time about it all the time. I said, like, you guys, you know how to start a project, but you're usually late in starting it and you're terrible about finishing it. You get about 3/4 of the way done and then you all leave. Then we pay holy hell trying to get you to come back. And, so I've always told them, don't be one of those people. Just be better than that. I mean, like, people will really seek you out if you complete things. And that's our #1 deal with construction guys today, is they just struggle to complete and get it done. It's frustrating to me, but if I put 3 to 9 months on there and I have a building still from COVID that's still not complete today. And it just irritates me. So, but it is what it is. This is just some timelines. This is the feed yard 2011, what it looked like. You guys bought this place, put that as a fixer upper. This is what they transformed it into, or started to. This is what it looks like in 2016. So over the years, people do keep expanding these places. They figure out that having a restaurant and motel space is profitable. So we'll just keep building more hotel space and more restaurant, you know. And if you're really good at what you do, people bring you cattle, and that's good. You know, there's margin in that, and so you have to be smart. You have to be disciplined, but there is margin there. And this is another one. This is a really old. This one was basically, let's say evacuated, but they hadn't been feeding cattle in these pens for quite some time. And then this is back up. That was 2006. This is 2009. Once they bought it, started filling pens. This is 2012. Today, how is a little feedlot city transformed through planning? And the neat thing with this is that everything makes sense in the process. And that was because of planning. Like, things aren't patched together in a puzzle. When I go to some of these yards today and they're just puzzled, you go in there and you're like, holy geez, did you ever have a plan, or did you just say, yeah, this looks like a great spot to build a pen, and just build a pen? And so you can make things, especially with labor issues. Why I tell people that is make it easy on yourself and make it easy on the people that you're going to hire to do this. Again, the number one reason to struggle is that we don't have people that want to be in here. It gets hard.
So over the years, you get to this point, is getting to that point, he's got a better premium for the animals he's producing now than he did previously.
Likely, you know, there are contracts like that today. In some of the yards where we feed at, the reason we feed there is because there's some back end premium to being a part of that organization. And is that right or wrong? Well, COVID taught us that if you were not working with the packers, you weren't selling very many cattle. Right? There were operations that were moving cattle during COVID and moving them in time. We had other yards that were 3 weeks behind, even up to almost a month and a half behind on shipping, because they just could not get the cattle sold. And today, I tell you that our industry, some people say, well, it's vertically integrated. And I said, no, I don't want it to be vertically. I want us as veterinarians, we need to talk to our smaller producers about risk management. How do you stay in business? We literally in our conference call this morning, that was what our conference call was about. Was what services can we offer to our clients in terms of risk management? LRPs, hedging, futures, and understanding ebb and flows. I mean, does anybody here understand ebb and flows of the market? I literally met with my marketer yesterday. That's what we were literally talking about. Was because you have price risk differences in the market where they raised, your limits have adjusted in the last 6 months as far as what markets can do, limit up and limit down. Soybeans, 4 weeks ago, traded 45 cents a bushel in one day. You're on the wrong side of that market, that'll kill you. You can't, all of a sudden now you cannot be a price person anymore. You have to be more of a trend person and look at weaknesses and strengths in the market and take advantage of the volatility of the market. Because there is money to be made in the volatility of the market. That is the advantage of volatility. we have to, I would say, you know, when I said earlier, I'm a really terrible veterinarian, I don't feel I'm a terrible veterinarian, but I've adapted to trying to provide to the client what it's gonna be to keep them in business and growing and being sustainable. From the, you know, 500 head producer all the way up to the 90,000 head yard. 90,000 head yards don't really need us in that deal that much. They have their own people. But I will tell you, the 500 head to 20,000 head or 25,000 head producer, they do. They need your help. You just have to build understanding of that market and sell it as a service. At the end of the day, I mean, there's no reason you shouldn't sell that as a service. Service. Them staying in business keeps you in business. An equal partnership. I think that's important. And yeah, you're right. I mean, when these yards expand like that, they probably got some future backing or they've been incentivized to expand. That's what they did. You got debt. There's no doubt about that. You know, today it costs right at about $800 an open pen space. Costs about $800 a head to build that. If you're going into deep pit barns, it's going to cost probably closer to about probably about $2,200, $2,300 a head to build a deep pit barn today. So it comes at an expense. But the one thing I know, I never feel sorry for my client when they build that stuff, right? That's the risk they took on. And when they ask me for my service, I just look at it and say, well, you had money to spend on that. You had money to spend on me. So I'm not the cheap guy. So I don't want to be the cheap guy at the end of the day. Okay. So animal handling facilities, these are some of the things that this is at our research yard in Garrow, that the very first yard I showed you that kind of expanded there. But we took into effect the biosecurity, we understood cattle flow. What activities, I always ask people, what activities are going to be going on in here? Just so that we get it right. That's important to us. These guys make money off of research. We capitalize anywhere from $50 up to $150 a head when we do research project. We try to. We have to do good on that project, but we have to have all the stuff that we need to make sure that we're very detailed and we make it easy. Our computing system, every animal that comes in, or the RFID tag, everything pops up on that TV screen. That's not for watching football. That literally is just our animal health system that pops up when we're turned on. That's all on, and it's right chute side. Everything is right there. There's just a keyboard that we put out here. Computing system is all inside. Okay. There's autoclaves in here. The storage, there's a little storage area back there for tag, refrigeration and so forth. There's cleaning spaces over here. Everything is matted, so we take care of foot health. Everything is easily drained and easily washed, clean. Everything is clean after every time we get done processing. It's easily washed down. We can wash that building down in about an hour flat. We have systems that are all hydraulically adjustable. Today, have you ever seen that study? I always tell people, usually you can always hear me say 15, 20 years ago. It might have been 16 years ago, or it might have been only 10 years ago, but I always say 15, 20 years because now I have the privilege of saying I practiced that long, so I can at least use that numbers, right? But has anybody ever seen that study from Temple Grandin? It was about 15, 20 years ago. It is on exit speeds of cattle and the swirl on the pole. You remember that? Okay. That's actually when you think about that study, and I know Temple, visited with her before, but that study to me is defunct. Because what that exit speed and jumping and leaping into chutes or out of chutes had to do was right here. So in facilities today, when I can build new facilities, everything is recessed. There's no steps. 2 inches up, 4 inches up, or 4 inches down for an animal is a lot. You will actually increase jumping, slipping, falling, balking before coming into the chute, just because of the step. When you do that, cattle walk in, walk out. Really an amazing deal. So and then footing is extremely important. You put cattle on slippery surfaces, slippery concrete. You don't bed that down or you don't put rubber matting down to improve footing. How many of you ice skate? How many people are good at ice skating? Not very many. There's like, I always say there's like 3%. I think those are all the professional hockey players. Okay? So, and they're good at it, right? I'm not. I get on ice, I look like, it's just terrible. It's just flat terrible. Okay? Cattle are the same way. When they're on a slippery surface, they lose their confidence. If somebody loses their confidence and they're being pressured, by something that's going to potentially hurt them, how would you act? Your anxiety level would go way up. You'd get a little cuckoo in the head. You'd even think about, if you had a weapon, you'd think about pulling a weapon and hurting another person, right? Cattle do the same thing. Improve their footing, attitude improves. And in vet clinics, we have a lot of concrete sometimes, and we have slippery surfaces. So find where those slippery surfaces are and fix them. The people from Animat, there's other people that make these mats. These are all Animats. And we just make sure that they're really perfect before they ever come in. This is a research facility that I've designed that if you can't get one bought, this is what we'll build eventually. And so today I did put, I tell people this today because I feel a lot more confident about it, that this is an autonomous feeding barn who basically is trying to be people free. And so in my designs and in my head, I have, like when I've done facilities for packing plants today, one of the last ones I did was in National Beef in Dodge City, Kansas. And when I did that, I wanted to make a automated tram that would take them from the bud tub to the knock box. And the USDA said the animal has to walk into the knock box. I said, well, they walked to the tram. It seems like that's logical to me. We didn't lift them from the semi all the way to the tram, so that they walk to the tram. But I wanted to make it because our level of downers primarily occur in slaughter anyway, or fabrication plants, from that tub area to the knock box. And I was quickly notified there, like when I was designing those facilities, that a single down animal in a packing plant today is between $7,000 to $8,000 a minute for time down. Like I could not fathom making $7,000 a minute. I'd rather not making it, but that's the cost. And so how do you prevent downers in that area? Well, I did it with, they didn't accept the very first design, which is the design they should have accepted, because that was the absolute best one. It was going to require a lot more gutting of the facility and redoing of some things. But they presented that facility at NAMI's conference a couple years ago in Kansas City. We reduced their labor in the back. We didn't reduce their labor at the plant. We reduced the labor in the back where cattle handling is going on by a third. And we reduced downers almost by about 66% from where they were at today. And I told them we could have got that reduced more. You just went with the first design. The first design was really awesome without the tram. But today I'm looking at, like, there's farm robotics out of California that have robotic injectors that they're working on in dairies, that the chute is totally different than what we have today. It's actually just a really comfortable squeeze area. It squeezes the animal, this little robotic arm comes down, places the vaccines, place 3 vaccines in one spot. It's consistent, it's exact almost every time. So those are things that, like today when I do facilities, when I design with that in mind. So that I can remove what I have there currently and just place that in there. So it'll be a little bit easier transformation. You won't have to redesign or rebuild the whole building or the facility. It'll be very simple that way. So those are the things that I look at. And that's the autonomous feeding barn is something that I've dreamt up that I think I can get that to come to fruition someday. If we do it, I think it's going to be really awesome. But we're going to figure it out. It's not because I don't want to work with people, just that I just know what we have for labor, and it's tough. But I think also we would use this as a training facility and certification facility. These are the safety gates that I put in today, or some of them. I put in different ones. This is just one little model. This is up in Washington State, Pasco area. It's a simple walkthrough. Cattle will get through that. Calves will get through that. There are little chains. You see a chain hook there and a chain hook there that you can zip across if you have little calves or beef on dairies or something like that. Little 3 weights or whatever. But my whole goal of that is, you know how many seconds it takes to open a gate and get through a gate? Just a little walk-through gate. If you're getting chased, Ben, you can get through that in about 3 seconds.
Over it.
Yeah, open and okay. But yeah, I'd agree with you. Most times, it's probably about 10 seconds. You're just walking and whatnot. This. And I've had people tell me I'm a pretty big person. I have no way I can fit through that 18-inch on center gap. I'm like, you'll fit through there. You'll fit through there. You're getting chased by a 1,300-pound cow that is very intentional. You'll fit through there. You will find a way, I promise. You will get really skinny really quick. Okay? And so, but the cool thing about that, why we have very few animals ever test that opening is because they don't see it. So you have to go with what cattle, like depth perception and what cattle see in terms of panoramic views and stuff like that. If they're looking and their ears are pointed directly forward at it, they would likely be able to go, I think that is an opening there. But because of where this post is set, right in the middle behind it, they don't recognize it. And so you just play on their eyesight a little bit and realize that put things in areas where they won't even know it's there, but you do, and it helps you and gets you through. That's important. When I do facility today, I put all these little safety walkouts, and they all have those little escape gates. So always behind a gate, just like what you see here, there's a gate there. Always behind the gate, there's a safety walk, an escape. So that you can literally be in this walkway and you're on the correct side of the cattle. So typically if I need cattle to turn and go into this bud tub here and come back around and through, I will always be on the inside corner of the cattle. So it literally, when people say, well, to do these, you have to have some experience. I try to make that so that even if you don't have experience, I intentionally put you in the correct side of the cattle every time of where you should be. Right. And I've had people say, that's expensive to do. Try to look at what a workman's comp deal is today. And then what's the value of a life? And then what's the value of a person just getting them to come work for you and feel safe? That is the one of the number one reasons they don't want to do this. If I can go to Walmart and be a greeter, I'll go be a greeter, right? That's simple. Just don't want to be chased by these. And what's the number one thing? And I'm at fault for this too. We typically talk about how dangerous our environment is. And I want to get to where I start bragging about we put all these little safety areas in for you to use, and it makes everything perfect. perfect and great. And it makes working cattle enjoyable. And it makes it fun. I have a guy down in Kansas, it's with High Choice Feeders that we did this facility in. And he just WhatsApped me some videos here the other day of that same facility again. He just loves it. He brags about it all, and they have all these safety walks and everything. He just thinks it's the greatest thing since pumpkin pie. I'm proud of him for that. So, again, just footing and things that we do for making sure that our cattle have good food. This is a really cool gate system, honestly. Like in some of our gate systems, these are pivot pipes, or pivot, basically. Oh, I should say it's well shafts is what those are right there, and then they're on pivots, and so that's about a 40-foot gap between like where the feed alleys are and as far as for getting cattle to come across. And then one person, I thought this is going to be heavier heck to do, and but they swing really nice. Just so simple. But when you swing one, makes the other one swing with. So rather than having 4 gates to go close to run cattle across, I was like, that's a genius. Simple things. I always tell people this is just simple things make a big difference. And like when I said earlier, before you build something, go look at other people's stuff. Call me, I'll tell you where to go. You really want to know some good things to look at, I'll send you there. This is the bud tubs that we do today. This one still has a catwalk. My preference is no catwalks. Open up the side alley or the sides, at least halfway up. Keep them open so cattle can see. Okay. But this is what we're talking about with voluntary flow. Flowing in, they could actually move this sweep gate back if they wanted and give it more space. That gate can always be open because this gate comes back, so that gives them the ability to come back. And that's what we're looking for. I don't usually, like when we do these, we usually do not want them to ever sweep that gate. They don't have to, because that's work. If you design a facility correct, you shouldn't have. This is another one. This is in Indianola. We screwed this up for him a little bit. We had people standing there and had people standing there. This poor guy back here, I thought he was going to lose his. Like, could you guys please move just 5 feet to the side? And then, of course, I'm back there videoing. So screwed him up. But these guys are really, this is a Timmerman yard in Indianola. Again, that's what we're looking at, right? Preference on double alley versus single alley. My preference is always single alley. And Danny Daniels is literally my best friend in the world. Passed away this year, and he and I would go round and round about singles and doubles. And reason doubles are fine. Only reason I don't like doubles is I don't like transitions. Cattle get stuck in transitions when they convert down to a single. And that's tough on them. And so I don't want to stop flow. I want flow to continue. When I design facilities, you will never bring more cattle into this facility until there's only like 3 or 4 left. They have to have a spot. This is not a storage device. It's just simply a voluntary guiding device. That's all it is. You can call it a tub, you can call it a box, you can call it whatever you want. Voluntary guiding device. It's not a tub. We fill tubs up. Don't fill this up. You want it to work correctly. So one of the first things I always ask people, like if they say, "Oh, it's not working like you designed, Doc," I'm like, "Well, how many cattle are you bringing, and are you filling the tub?" Yes. Don't fill the tub. How many cattle will fit down that alley? What did we talk about? Right? Do that. Then call me back.
That's what you aim for then is
number of
What will fit in that alley.
alley.
Yeah, alley always.
What's the holding in outside the door,
Um,
so you don't have to wait forever,
like back here, you mean?
right outside.
Oh, okay.
You have to wait forever.
Yeah, I'll show you here. It'd be basically, that facility I had up earlier. That one. Dating bins, right there. That's kind of what would be over at that particular one. This is at our research yard. This is the one I designed for the research yard, but it'd be similar to that. I think I can. When we get done here, I'll pull that drawing up of what's there exactly. Then that'll be the easiest to show you. But I can escape out and then I have to stop sharing and then, this is where I really, obviously this is where my passion lies is the animal handling facilities and making bodies. But so now it's always difficult. Now I gotta get into some technical stuff and I'm not always great at it. So, but I want to work my way through it. But these are some of the presentations that we put together for our feedlot clients. That I go to and some of the ranches I go to, I share the same stuff with them as well. One of the things that we always talk about is as far as with, treatments and those things. Lily, was anybody at the Academy of Vet Consultants meeting this last week in Denver? And so there's some good discussion in some of those pre-meetings and stuff like that. One of the things that I've talked to people about and colleagues is that, today we're still, stuck with, for the most part, utilizing, temperature, physical appearance, temperature, stethoscope. If you train your clients how to use a stethoscope to lung score cattle, locomotion scoring for lameness. And we have some temperature tags that give you readings every 50 seconds or so that go to a computer system. And that's really the best defining moments we have for ERD today. And quite frankly, I told him, I says, we're in 2023, and I says, quite frankly, that's embarrassing. Our company today is doing things on behalf of the beef industry in terms of people like in California and San Francisco in particular. Earlier this spring, Dan Thompson, our CEO, went out there and had to testify or not testify, the wrong term, but basically had to present on behalf of our industry that we do have the capabilities of tracking antibiotic use per kilogram of body weight of meat produced. Because in San Francisco, they had an ordinance where grocery stores, restaurants, and that had to provide labeling of that nature. And you can say, well, why does that matter? Well, for me, it doesn't matter to me, right? But it does matter to our markets. And when you lose market share and one of your other protein partners are able to provide that information, oh, which one are you going to choose, right? If you're in their shoes, and you can say, well, that's kind of silly at the moment, but Kroger's and some of those large grocery chains that got fine of $250 million, but thinking it's so silly for selling the product without having that on the labels. Sense? So why this talk is about case definitions is that we have to be better in our case definitions and understanding why we're using things to be used. Not every animal deserves, exceed or I shouldn't say name brand product because I would make some decision to do that. But why we use an antibiotic is or a steroid or those types of things. We should have reasons for why we're doing it, right? Not just to do it. And so I'm going to do this one, and I'll maybe throw in some BRD stuff and things like that we do. But this is one of the things that we do on lameness because today in our feed yards or just in our industry in general, come this fall, basically starting here in October and that will go all the way over to April. Our rates of more musculoskeletal injuries are higher, typically in a given season. And it's one of the things that we have the largest case fatality rate on, in our yards that do not, diagnose correctly. They usually just find a lame or injured. And they're not defining what that lameness or injury is. And we've taught them that by utilizing your skills and what the animal gives you and what you can actually visually see and test, you can define it and then you can improve. So we have the yards that do that today, and we've actually improved case fatality rates from say 25% down to 5 to 8%. And that's just in defining the case. We've gotten better at that. So defining the case. The team approach. This is down at Ward Feed Yard down in Larned, Kansas. This is what we do at some of our squeeze sheets today. We make this little door access here for auscultating cattle. So we revamp the chutes so that we're not getting our hands pinched constantly if we're putting a stethoscope in there. Listen, that does make a difference for some people. For me, I got beat up hands. If you have to beat up, maybe if I get really beat up, I can retire quicker. So, I don't have to do this forever. But our team wise, when you're working with a bunch of people, it's important that we have poll cards or poll tickets. Today, we have created some with smart sheets, which is basically like an Excel spreadsheet. You can actually build things on there. So like we do surveillance stuff at some of the yards where we have people driving feed alleys and we have all the pins marked on the smart sheet. So literally it's just a checkbox, like you went by D12 and you've seen something in D12, you can check it. You can, in the comments, you can put down what tag number it was, or you can take a picture of it, tag it to the picture. And then when you submit the final surveillance report, it literally goes out to the entire pool team that's going to be walking those barns and those pens. And they all get to see, like, these are the pins. Because one of the things that we're doing today is actually just trying to survey which pins we need to be in. I don't think we need to be in all of them. Okay. So and we can dispute that, I guess, if you want, but that's just what we're trying to do. We do, once we come in, we have physical symptoms, we do a physical exam, and then we just communicate to our pin riders and so forth what they see. If we have a question, we say, well, what did you see for lameness? Like which leg was it on or whatever. So today when they don't mark which leg it's on, I literally number the legs, starting with the right front as number 1, right hind is number 2, the left hind is number 3, and the left front's number 4. And we have that on the front of our poll book. And so if you don't know what the numbering system is, you just have to flip back to the front page and go, oh, that's number 2. So I just circle number 2. So we have that literally. So we have that on our poll card 1, 2, 3, 4. That can be for severity of a respiratory pull or which leg it is. So that when they get into the chute, we're not sitting there. Has anybody ever dealt with toe abscesses? Those things don't swell up, right? And when they're in the chute, if you're looking at all 4 feet in the chute, they all look the same. Now, which one do I pick up? Do I want to pick all 4 of them up? Not really, you know. And if you have 50 of them little buggers back there to pick up, I guarantee you don't want to pick up that many. What's 50 times 4? That's 200, right? That's a back-breaking deal. So if guys and gals don't mark which foot, I invite them to come on down to the hospital. Why don't you lift all 4 feet? We'll see if you start marking down which leg it is. It's a pretty simple deal. Okay. So, but I think we can do all that with better communication. Once they're in the hospital, we do the physical exam, we do a lung score, we temp everything, we do locomotion score prior to coming in. If we can, if we know, we have kind of an idea. We depend on the pin riders to provide some of this information. They should know if it's normal, mild, moderate, severe. Because we just know that how we're going to handle with that information, we know how we're going to handle that animal and how we're going to treat it once it's in the chute. Okay. So that's our lung scores. It's basically 1 to 5 system. Today it's 1 being normal, 2 is mild, basically 2 lung scores are all upper respiratory issues. Hear sounds on auscultation on the inspiration, and it's very clear on the expiration, meaning that most of the sound is all coming from the trachea, or the larynx, or the sinus cavity. And so, like, even if we have a wheezer or a honker, and these are Dr. Tom and Dr. Wade Taylor that mentored us on all of this stuff, at the end of the day, and made us better at the end of the day. And so, if it's like a honker or wheezer, we'll actually come up and we'll listen to the sinus cavities and the larynx, and we'll try to decide, is it actually a rhinitis, a laryngitis, or diphtheria, or the true wheezer, honker, extended. Because outcomes of a diphtheria versus a wheezer different. Okay, so we actually try to score that, and we have his our database today. We house. We didn't know how important that database was for keeping records electronically, but after like the San Francisco deal and being able to make sure that we can provide that information, we can do it quickly. You can tell your clients that there's these crazy guys from Kansas and Nebraska that keeping our markets live and vibrant, because we didn't lose a market sale because of it. And that's important. And that system today allows us to track these things, so we can track our pen writers, and we track how our hospital people are doing and what they're doing, and we know which hospital people can train other hospitals. They're good. Okay? If we have confidence. So that's how we do it. Anatomy wise, if you want to give this lecture.
I'll let you.
Yeah, I'm terrible at it. I'll do my simple lecture. Okay. The simple lecture is that with soul abscesses, you do have a fair number of animals that come in with soul abscesses. Typically, those are long haul cattle for the most part. They're long haul cattle, they're dehydrated. And when they dehydrate, this fat pad, this cushion right down here actually shrinks, and that gets you closer to the bone. And then if you do step on something, or you're standing on the truck for too long, you actually get bruising in that solar region. And as a result of that, we will have cattle that will walk a lot of times they'll be more up on their toe as they're walking, because it hurts to be on that sole. But when they're frightened or terrified because of pain and they see you, they'll put that thing down. So you really got to pay attention to that. This is, I would say, sole abscesses are tough to diagnose in the pen, but you can at least let the pen writer know which leg, or the hospital person which leg it is. They can pick that up. They can test. And so that's how we train. And I'll show you all that here. Toe abscesses typically is, and this is cross section of that foot, obviously, but that's just showing where we would actually clip the tip of the toe to provide drainage. Now, people will argue, is clipping the tip of the toe important? Yes, it is. What if it's muddy conditions? It still is very important, because you're giving the path of least resistance. If you do not clip it, that infection typically will come up and right up out of the coronary band, and now you have exposure to this joint right here, the distal phalanx, the middle phalanx, coffin joint, yes, and then fetlock, all that will run up this heat tissue as well. We've had some toe abscesses that will migrate back and become like sole abscesses and migrate back. Yeah. We've had toe abscesses that will really migrate all the way up the leg. So clipping is important. Okay. Early diagnosis is important. So locomotion score. This is something that Dr. Shane Terrell, we actually helped fund this research when he was going through his PhD. That's normal. Shane scored, locomotion scored a 0 to 3. There are locomotion scores out there today that are a 1 to 4. I almost say that the 1 to 4 is probably easier, because most people don't think about 0 as normal. And so 1 on our lung scoring system is normal. So a lot of times what I'll train our feedlot staff is a 1 to 4 system. So like this would be a 1 lung score or a locomotion score. This one, you can see a shortened stride on the left hind. Mild limp, no swelling. That would be a locomotion score 2. No swelling, no head bob, and short and stride. That's how we teach that. And I always give visuals for the crews that when we're doing this. Okay. Maybe. There we go. This one you have visual swelling, leg. You have a head bob. You have a right hind that short and stride. And that'd be a locomotion score 3. Okay. So swelling, head bob, short and stride, locomotion score 3. Locomotion score 2, no swelling, no head bob, short and stride, locomotion score 2. Sometimes I have to say, comprende, or do you understand? I don't know what it is in Polish, and I should probably learn what it is in Polish to confuse people. Okay, so I did, and I should have put one up there, which is the locomotion score 4. Locomotion score 4 would be an animal that's very similar to, say, like a locomotion score 3, except that it's reluctant to move. You have to actually encourage it. If it'll move, it'll stop. Just got look at it like, do you really want me to move? Because I really hurt. Okay, I don't want to move. So they're reluctant. Why that's important? You imagine this as a 2, 3, 4. Okay, this is Dr. Shane's research study. When you look at mortality rates based off of those severity scores, that's what he looked at. So he had to go to these yards. I think he did 10 different feed yards. If I remember, it was 7 or 10 different feed yards that he went to, and he trained, and then he got them to start locomotion scoring. And then he could start, once they started reporting that in the system, our system actually downloads all the feedlots information at midnight every night. And we get all the information. It's cleaned and swept, and we get it by 6:30 usually in the morning for all of our yards. Okay. So we could track that as it's still. So what's that mean in terms of odds of death in regulars by locomotion scoring? Well, if you're a locomotion score 3 versus a 2, that's what you have to imagine there. Okay, p-value is very, very good, or prevalence, I should say, very, but you're 2 times more likely to die if you're a 3 versus a 2 locomotion score on an operation. If you're a 4 versus a 2, you're almost 4.5 times more likely to die. So could you imagine if you had that information, how you would treat the animal differently? And you have to imagine, like, even in our world, I would encourage you to imagine it in your world. When you have a swollen joint, a cow, and she's a locomotion score 4, what's the likely outcome of that cow? And the producer might say, you know, this is a $30,000 bull, Doc. Well, I might try a little bit something different, but I might not do it in my clinic. I might send that on to somebody else that's maybe has a little different expertise, or I might consult somebody before I do it, because it's still going to be likely a bad outcome. You know, I know, like on stifle injuries now, they are doing some surgeries on this, and they're having some success on ACL tears in bovine and in horses. So it's not out of the realm. It's just what you want to pay, what the value of that animal is. So if it's a $2,000 breeding effort, I'd say, you know, she might look like better hamburger to me than a surgery at, you know, South Dakota State or Minnesota or Iowa State or Kansas. Then rails, basically those are animals that we market early because of, hey, we don't allow them to die. They're like a stifle injury, those types of things that we diagnose. And we say that, you know, there's no way we're going to do an ACL repair at the feedlot. We can fix that. Now, I'll show you some video of ones that are basically like a lane score, locomotion score 4, that we can turn them in if it's a bad toe infection and we can remove a toe, we can actually turn those animals into almost a one. The surgery. You have to define that. Right? You have to decide which ones you want to do. All that makes sense? That should be in the proceeding, so. Mortality rate by diagnosis. So once we've increased our diagnosis, now we have different areas where now we can look at and say, okay, foot rots, we're 12.4%. I think that's excessively high today, but still is there, unfortunately, and there's seasonality to that as well. Like I said, right now, going into the winter and the spring when it's muddy, conditions are a lot worse. So even hospital conditions. So our ability to keep them better spots is tough. We do upper limb lameness diagnosis, and basically that's anything that's above the fetlock or higher. We diagnose as upper limb lameness. If it's toe abscess, we look. Septic joints, we look. Sole abscesses, laminitis, and so forth. The majority of the things that we find today is all in the, just like in the horse. Very few things are up high, but we still have that diagnosis. So, lameness prevention through facilities, just looking at frayed metal, potholes, broken gauge, broken concrete there, flooring options. I kind of showed that earlier, but these sheet metal tin for fences, they don't, they're really great at cutting things up and lacerating things, they rust. And we do see that in a lot of facilities still today, honestly. And they're just entrapment for injuries and lacerations, lameness that you see it frayed like that and take it down and either replace it or put something better up. You're blocking a hole. Plywood would be better than this. So, and that's what it does right there. And that is from that facility. And this pin actually was kind of a bloodbath. You went to the pin and you seen what was all going on. And I mean, there's just blood everywhere. How many animals cut their side of their legs, and then that stuff will actually shave off a hoof really quick. Believe it or not, the sidewall of a hoof. You try to cut hoof with your meat dropsy knife. Now, I got sharp meat dropsy knives, and I've been to vet clinics before, and I've used their knives. They're not sharp, and I have a booger of a time cutting them with my knife, let alone a dull one. But that tin, boy, it'll cut, or sheet metal, it'll cut them in like that, quick. So it doesn't take much. Those types of things, and why, like today, I don't like the V-floored alleys and those things. It's because this is what happens eventually. Usually they fill up with manure. We don't clean them frequently enough. The other thing is there's a lot of wear and tear on the side. You can see the hoof marks on that. So why I don't like those systems is because if cattle are trying to narrow or widen their base for walking through something, and this is what they have to walk through, that's not fair to the animal. I don't know, has anybody here ever tried to walk through one of those? To investigate one? Oh, that's a booger. You can imagine being an animal having to do that. This was from a animal that actually on the side of the semi-trailers with the holes, put his foot through there, and you just see it, but lacerated the inside wall of that hoof. Believe it or not, does anybody have like the Hoof Boss tools or anything like that? Or trimmers? Yeah. So any type of a trimming tool, you can actually trim that out really nice. That'll actually heal up really good. But again, you just call this an injury and you treat that with some name brand antibiotic. You didn't treat the problem. Problem is there. You got to treat the problem. You gotta train people to do that. We can't be, I always tell people, part of selling our services today is teaching people this, and we sell that service. Why I tell you that is I would encourage y'all to do the same. We can't be all everywhere. We can save a lot more of them if we just teach people how to teach. And I know there's practice acts and stuff like that. I don't know that there's any practice act of an owner taking some nippers and cleaning that up. Oh, if it's his animal, his or her animal. Right? We're just teaching that. Potholes, this pothole, look, even with the concrete, you can put a can of paint, gallon paint in that pothole and it would cover it up. Imagine bringing cattle in on a concrete surface and watching animals. Well, one, we snap some legs, obviously. An easy way to fracture something. And then you think about twists, turns of those tendons and things like that that it can do. Broken fences, cables, flooring I showed earlier. This is that worm flooring. You can actually put that in trailers. I have some cow-calf plants that have this in their trailers. It's actually really nice. Makes the trailer heavier though. And then of course the animat adds. This here, just knowing where your mat is in front of the chute. You can see the skid marks there. And that's actually pretty, I would not use that type of stuff. People have to understand that this is not grip at the end of the day. Cattle slide on that still. And we see people using old tires for some sort of a grip, and that's not grip. Grooved concrete floors, if you're washing the concrete, how many of us have seen grooved concrete floors and they're washed? Clean them. Does that groove work for anti-slipping then, if there's no organic matter in it? No. So why would you spend money grooving concrete? You're going to wash the floor. The only way grooves work is you have to have organic matter in the groove to prevent the slip. It's like a tractor lug on a tire on a slippery asphalt highway. The only way the lug works is it has to have dirt between the lugs to prevent slipping. Grooved concrete is the same way with feet. So don't spend excessive money on that. This here is important just from the standpoint of having these spaces. Don't have spaces. If you have mats, don't have spaces. Is that right? Those are all good. This is true. This is actually a South Dakota State in the feeding barn. And why I took that is that actually, if you're going to groove in areas where you're going to have organic matter, that's a perfect groove. People ask me all the time, how far should grooves be? They should be basically the width of your palm of your hand, and a ½ inch on either side. If you put your palm in your hand, that'll feed your cat. You put your palm underneath their foot, the width of their foot is about the palm of your hand. Okay. And they need a ½ inch on either side to catch. And about 3/4 to an inch deep. And it should be flush and level on top. That's why I took that picture. Shouldn't have any frayed edges. And that's hard to do when you pour concrete. You have to do that at the right time. Like that. Pouring material. All of that's that stuff. This is, oops. Let me see if that will play. Yep. That's how COAB systems are made. Right there. And that's how injuries are made, stifle injuries. As we tell people today with musculoskeletal is that most all musculoskeletal injuries or issues are a result of the handwork or the environment. Cattle are not born with lameness. Because of people, we create lameness. And then we do a really poor job of diagnosing. This is why. Why not playing? We have people today that would say that that little gray right there, the injury is in the hip. You agree? After what I've just said, would you agree that the injury is in the hip or is it in the foot? Or do we really know yet?
It's moving its hip quite a bit.
Because it's hiking, yeah. And I showed you this one. Is it in the hip or upper limb or in the foot? Do we know? So if I'm training guys and gals in the feed yard, I'm telling them that 90% of our lameness is in the foot. 90% of that lameness is in the hind foot. 90% of that lameness is in the outside claw of the hind foot on calves that are 21 days on feed or less. So if I bring this animal and he's 21 days on feed or less, and I bring him into the chute, and all I got from the pin rider is that it's on the number 3 leg and he's injured. Should I pick the foot up? Yes, 100%. Would you die? Like this one has a little bit of swelling. You can kind of see it has a little bit of swelling there. Those get diagnosed as foot rots all too often. That is not a foot rot. You can also see he's up on the tip of his toe a little bit. That's likely a sole abscess, or it could be a toe abscess that moved back to the sole. And because it's swollen, which normally toe abscesses are not swollen in the early phases, it's likely been there for at least 7+ days, and it's moving up the leg. That's how we would diagnose it. So preventing slipping, I think, is always important. This is just I showed you some where it's a butt tub. This is the butt box. These are some of the early designs I did. That's actually rubber flooring. That stuff's been there for quite a while, so it is getting slippery. But so repairing that, you have to repair that about 8 to 10 years in the facility. Just making sure that cattle have a good surface to walk on, and that's all rubber all the way to the sorting pits. So it's rubber 60 feet out before they ever get there. It's all rubber inside. It's all rubber when they get to the sorting pits. That's what a toe abscess looks like. As this one was clipped, but I would say it's clipped late. So when we clipped him, this is what I call a dry socket. So there's a hole, and you can see that pedal bone, coffin bone right there. It's necrotic, black up into the bone. And that's also traveling up. That's traveling back, I should say, the back part of the sole. I have an additional, I didn't put that slide on here, but there's an additional slide to that animal where that animal also had embolic pneumonia, where the bacteria from here actually went septic, and that went shower to the lungs, and you had showered abscesses of lung material. And so toe abscesses can also get respiratory disease as a result. We have to teach all of that, and teach about sepsis and all of those things and what can happen. So when we go diagnose things today, we do a lot more than just that. Oh, I did have one in there. Oh, darn. I lied, I didn't really have all my slides memorized. Okay. But here's a toe abscess, was untreated, unclipped. There's your embolic. And actually, when you cut across some of these, you would get kind of a yellowish green pus within some of those air sacs, where that basically lodged in place.
Yep.
Yeah.
That last buddy pen you just showed, would that be better to have a solid part way up?
Back here.
That, the one where they were in moving.
Oh, circling around and
Yeah.
it would be better if it was two things there is because that was an old, very old tub design. And so it was back in the day where you would be forcing and sweeping cattle around versus like what I showed you with that voluntary motion. And so when cattle would get there, their true intent is they can't see the hole or the alley, the snake alley. So they want to come back with it. So they're just trying to circle back, come back, and return where they came from, which is the strongest instinct of any prey animal, is when they're lost, then you should turn around and go back. And that's what they're trying to do in that video. But again, this is just a demonstration. You don't have proper footing. And you have, I'm not saying they're terrible facilities, they're not good. You could improve that by opening some of that up to give them a better visual of where they need it to go. And I have different pictures in that of facilities where we revamped some of those old tubs and old snakes. We've even cut the bottoms out of those E4 alleys and opened all of that up. And people got worried that, oh, they're going to slip underneath. Actually don't. They're able to widen their foot base out and they walk. I have yet to break break a leg in a facility like that. And maybe I'm just lucky. But I have also told the guys, gals at the feedlots, if one does break their leg, just write it down as a respiratory, so that way they don't know that. I don't know. I did tell Jerry Kuppelman, the CEO of ILS, that one day. He was one of the first ones that complained about it, and I said, Jerry, I said that if us doing something to improve our movement and our flow, and then you're going to come in here and beat us up over it. He said, well, I'm just telling you, you're going to break a leg. I said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll never break a leg because we'll always diagnose it. He just laughed and we went on. So, but honestly, we've not broken that. The facility I'm thinking about it is at Windmill Feeders. It's over at Elba, Nebraska. Today we do beef on dairy there primarily. It's 10,000 head yard. We just background those calves there. It's 90 days that they're there. So that little 10,000 head yard, we literally go through about 34,000 head a year through that yard. So it's always successful. Yep.
So on your toe abscess, aftercare, does it go to a recovery pen or is it a medical pen or something?
Yeah, so I always encourage them, and I say this, always encourage them that they should go to a pen that is bedded. So if you have concrete, put bedding down. Well, they always say, well, should I bed the whole pen or just bed the whole pen? Give them the access. We're gonna have more than one in there typically. And so bed the pen down, and yeah, we'll keep them there for probably at least 5 to 7 days or longer. But every 5 days, we're going to reevaluate, see where we're at. Because all we do know is that there are some of these toe abscesses that actually turn. That's a toe abscess there. Yeah, there's a toe abscess there. Let me fast forward here. I'll show you. And I'll come back to these, I promise. But I want to show you here. This is at lane score, locomotion score 4. This is in Washington State. You can see that's a toe abscess that went south. And it's on a single digit on that leg right there. Okay. Reluctant to move, it's swollen, definitely has a head bump. locomotion score 4 every time. Okay. This is that animal, 2 days post-surgery. In total removal. Same animal. That fair? And I don't use giggly wire. In school, they taught us to use giggly wire to do toe amputations. And, Jake, and I would tell you today, each disarticulation. Because sawing into bone, there's a lot of nerve endings in bone. I know that today. It hurts. Okay. It hurts bad. It's one of the worst pains I've ever felt in my life. I never want to go through that again. But I know every time they hit that sawed bone on something, that hurts. Doesn't matter that scar tissue comes over and all that. It's still there, it's still viable, and it hurts. With disarticulation of that joint, I know that with articular cartilage being there, how many nerve endings are in articular cartilage? There. When they bump that, you have scar tissue over it. I'm not saying it don't hurt, it just don't hurt as bad. And I can actually, I should say when we teach them today, I can do that in probably about 5 minutes. The whole procedure takes a maximum of probably 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes max. And I do it with a knee cross and everything. It's really quick and simple. And you know who taught me? This is the beauty of it. 2 feedlot cowboys. I taught them how to do it with a scalpel. And these 2 guys, I went back to the next time and we had some more toe abscesses. We tended to buy some of those, I call them opportunity cattle. And because I'm always willing to give my education to somebody else, they were willing to give it back. They said, Doc, we found a better way to do it. And we can do it quicker than you. It's actually cleaner and better. And I was like, show me. And they did. And I was like, I said, you all need to go teach vet school. Vet students. I said, that's pretty damn impressive. Right. And now I teach everybody else that, but I always give Jake credit for it. His name is Jake. But must have been something with the name. I don't know. But pretty ingenious, really. And that's how we do them today.
You do them standing up,
Yeah.
leg tied over, knife up.
Yeah.
Between
So
the
I'll
hands.
show you that. So this is my funny video. People online are gonna be mad at me here. Here's my funny video. How I lift a leg. So I always tap them, let them know that I'm there. I come around, I put a double clove hitch around. This is what I do. I come underneath the rope. Right there, I loop through like that, I half hitch that. You can let go of that and that's never gonna go anywhere if you pull that knot. Okay. And then I come up through. Now I have a long rope. Come up through there and I go back down through that loop. Now I got a double pulley. Now I'm only lifting half the weight. And for our little 90-pound men and women that they're lighter, maybe not, I always caution, I say they're not as strong, because they are strong today, they're stronger than me, but they can lift these feet up. And I always try to secure them. I have to sometimes undo the squeeze, but then I give that foot to me. But I lift them straight up. I don't pull them back and out. I lift them straight up, but I go up with the natural motion of the animal. Once I do that, I loop through there. I usually come around a couple times and really secure that thing up. The reason I do that is that I won't let everybody feel this, but you can feel across the top side of my hand here And there's two breaks in that bone. And because you don't secure that foot up, when one kicks back, you're pointing to a person that's showing where the lesions is, and that animal fires a kick back in your finger, and it takes your finger and it shoves it back here. That breaks things. And so I always secure things tighter than heck today. That animal's not going anywhere, and I can do everything on that foot that I need to do. Okay. And then we do on the side of the dew claw, those. Oops. Down here on the side of the dew claw, if you ever look. Yeah, right here is good. So one finger's width away from this dew claw is where the vein sits. And why I tell people that a Pollock could become a veterinarian and work on cattle, because God never changed the hydraulic system or the electrical system on the 2012 model from 2024 model. It's all the same. It's beauty. Like if you think about like our mechanics, if those stupid engineers would just stop changing things and keep some of the hydraulics and the electrical systems the same, well, we could all work on them. Right? You change the look of it, I don't care, but at least keep the anatomy the same, right? Of course, our diesel mechanics would say they are the same, you just don't know how to work them. So, and that's fair. So, does that make sense? So we do I do a butterfly catheter. I put a tourniquet around, butterfly catheter, shoot 15 cc's of lidocaine in that vein. Within a few seconds, it's dead. It's ready to work on. And I got about 20-30 minutes to work. Get that toe off. The animal doesn't feel safe. We use meloxicam, or you can use transdermal banamine, things like that. Pain mitigation is important on lame animals. Can't stress that enough. Give them pain mitigation. Meloxicam works really good. A little bit longer acting. It does have, we put a 28-day withdrawal, residue withdrawal on it when we use it. That comes from FARAD. That's their best estimate. It's up to us to make sure, but that's what we use.
What dose?
You're going to ask me that, Ben.
Oh, is it 15 weeks? Okay, that's right.
I tell you, it's 1 15 milligram tablet per 33 pounds of body weight.
Okay.
That's my best.
Okay.
I know that's what we have in the computer.
Okay.
So that's our dose. On a mix per kg basis, we have to calculate that. I should have had that on here, so I apologize. Shoot injuries, I think, clipping the toe.
3 pounds and then 15.
Like this one. This is what it looks like when we clip the toe. When you leave that pus, I mean, we usually get some squirters that come out of that tip of the toe. And that's always a good thing. We don't take much off, we just open it up so it will drain. That's it.
Do you block the other side?
What's that?
Do you block the other side?
I'd like to. That's one thing, and we need to do that. So that's a great, I appreciate that, because that's something that we need to work on more. So I think we can do even a better job if we do. Tilt table shoots would be better. We do have some feed yards putting tilt table shoots in so that you can give enough time for that block to cure, make sure that, because even when they're up like that, I mean, and it just, you know, I've tried them and then they still break off. Like when I go let foot down and stuff. I still think like the tilt table shoot, it'd be better because this can allow more time for that to cure and set up and be right before you put that animal back down.
You need this wireless heat gun. Works great.
Say that again.
Use a wireless heat gun.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Works great. You just put them on, put a little heat on. You're
Perfect. I'll try that. I'll do that. I appreciate that.
So they're putting weight on that abscess toe, they're pumping the.
Yes, that is the benefit of doing it without the block. You are correct. So when they do step on that, and they step heel to toe, they are naturally pushing. But on a sole abscess, I would argue that, like, I wouldn't probably do them on toe abscesses because of that reason right there. But on a sole abscess or a hoof laceration injury type deal, I definitely.
I always blow.
Yeah.
Because I put them into a bedded stall anyway, and the bedded stall gives me the pressure onto the.
The
toe
back
abscess
foot.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but what you have almost 100% latest.
Oh,
They
nice.
walk like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like that toe amputation, just removing the infected joint and severely infected joint. Yeah. 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 That's good. I like, so that honestly, just like what those guys taught me about, you know, with the necropsy knife and the toe, this is how I learn, right? Is go places and you have people suggest and that's the one thing I would always say that Dr. Tom Nossing or Dr. Wade Taylor have always taught us, younger veterinarians is, and that's what I always encourage you guys is make sure you mentor your young people and always keep their minds open to learning. It's the most valuable thing. There's not a single thing that I know. I just present things that other people have given. And I just give that to you at the end of the day, because that's the fairest thing I can do for them. And I usually just give them credit when credit's due. I'll definitely use that, because that's good. This animal here, this is a sole abscess. I want to show this to you. You see how he's up on the tip of the toe? The best video I have for a sole abscess. And then when that animal came in, this is how much we ended up having to take off and debride off of that foot. And the one thing hopefully you all agree on this, I don't know, but I feel strongly on this, never remove any of that hoof there. Like I always tell people, you can go from where that suture line is, basically right here, over, straight across, and any of that underneath, forward, do not remove. Because that holds and supports the tip of that corium, that hoof wall. And if you remove that, you just create instability for that hoof wall. And so when we teach this at the feed yard, it's very important that they understand they cannot go, even if it is undermined there, do not go forward on that. Leave that alone. Okay. That is important. You do not want to lose it. Doing this here does not create hardly any instability. It does a little bit, but that'll heal. And that honestly healed within about 10 days. Sole abscesses to me are I love when I see a sole abscess because I am so confident that that animal is going to improve every time. Just, it's unbelievable how they heal and how quickly. These here, hopefully it plays, nope. These are those, so nobody in here has ever seen hairy heel wart, or they have, or, okay. So typically, they're caught at the vet lock. There. And I always say, just like with any foot rot, hairy heel wart, it's completely a hygiene issue. At the feed yard, dairies, wherever it is, it's a hygiene issue, number one. Cleanliness of the barns, cleanliness of the pens, all of that matters at the end of the day. And if the sanitary conditions are not good, even in your processing plant, that's why we wash everything down. Right? If things are dirty and you just had a pen that came in that had hairy heel warts, well, you should expect the next group to get hairy heel warts. You're not preventing anything, you're creating it. And so you gotta be smarter than that. And this is a very severe one, like this. Obviously, we did not. This is old. This is literally like when we first started seeing them. We just didn't know what the heck we were seeing. We had to go to dairy conferences and talk to other specialists that told us what the heck we were seeing. And Dr. Dorte, if anybody knows her from University, I think in Michigan State, I believe is where she's at, or Wisconsin. She's at University of Wisconsin. She's a fantastic, world-renowned digital dermatitis specialist. And she speaks 7 languages, so don't be afraid if you have an operation that speaks Dutch, she can speak Dutch. If you have an operation that speaks French, she can speak French. If you have an operation that speaks Spanish, she speaks Spanish. So, she's fantastic. She's taught us a lot over the years, and so I really appreciate her for that. This is what we would do. Like, we see this cavitated lesion. If we were going to try to treat this one, say we were trying to get this animal to where they were walking better to get onto a truck so they could get to slaughter or to fabrication. We would trim this excess corium here because that's pinching in on that sore. And that sore will never heal if you have that hangnail continually putting pressure on that sore. You have to get rid of the corium and the loose tissue to get that cleared up. We try never, I got a little bit of blood obviously, but we try never to irritate this lesion any more than what it's already irritated. Like, I've had people say, well, can't you just cut that bad stuff out? I'm like, Jesus, I'd hate to go to you for a doctor. I mean, my God, gruesome devil you. And I don't know, maybe that works, but for me, I'm like, no, I don't think so. Dr. Dorte has always taught us, do not irritate that any more than it's already irritated. We do use like tetracycline wraps on those. 5 cc's, you can use up to 10 cc's of Oxy 200 topically without creating a residue. So to the animal. So, but if it's a natural farm or natural feedlot, we do not use tetracycline, we use formaldehyde. There's also things like sodium bisulfate, which is like an organic acid that people like in the poultry industry use for pododermatitis. Works similarly, but quite honestly, the only thing that we've ever found we've had consistent efficacy with is formaldehyde. And formaldehyde on a lesion like this is not going to heal the animal. It's going to scab it where the animal maybe walk a little bit better and in place, but that that's there. It's never going away unless you guys tell me otherwise. But me, it's not going away. The lesions that are easiest, I think I had that on here. Oh, that's treating it. That's a potential cycle. Now Zinpro, they make that dissolvable tape. I don't know if you all know about that. So you can actually tape one up on the foot and it dissolves in like 3 days. Ask your Zinpro rep, it's fantastic stuff. Somebody was a genius on that one. I tell you, I wish that's like that little umbrella deal and the little tiki bars. And whoever invented that umbrella, genius. Them, the little sword toothpick, genius. I would have thought we would have been that inundated with pirates. Okay. This is that animal walking out. That was one of them that was in the back there on that front foot and still caught. But once that lesion heals, he will be walking better in about 5 days. Where that's at today. Foot rot, just making sure that we pick a foot up and we look in between, make sure that that's what it is. That's phase 2 foot rot. Phase 1, it would be swollen without any breakage in the dermis. Phase 2 foot rots typically are about from 72 hours to about 10 days is what a phase 2 foot rot is. Those are very treatable. But when you get to a phase 3 foot rot, those have like the granulation and the corn granulation tissue in between the toes or excessive granulation tissue in the middle of that toe. Those don't heal up. So when I showed you that case fatality rate of foot rots at 12%, those are late pulls. And when you see a foot rot that's blown up with granulation tissue, you can be assured to tell that person who pulled that animal that that's been there for 2 weeks. Because commonly in our, like today, they know not to do that to us, our pen writers. But in the past, we would have people bring stuff to us, or we would, when we go to the yard, They say, Doc, that just blew up last night. It wasn't there. Well, that's BS. It's been there. You just haven't seen it. Now, it might not be your fault if our pin conditions are such that you can't see the foot in the pin. That's not your fault. But if you can see the foot and you're moving your cattle like you're supposed to when you're riding the pin, you should have seen it. Taking a picture, we teach them also how to take pictures. And I would encourage you guys to do this with your cow-calf clients, honestly. If you're trying to diagnose something over the phone and they take this picture of this foot, they say, Doc, the foot's really swollen. They'll never say that one single toe is swollen. They usually say, Doc, cow, foot rot, it's really swelled up. What do you think I should give her? Send me a picture. Let me know what it looks like first. If they take this picture, well, you might agree that it's foot rot. I don't know. But if they take this picture, that's septic arthritis of the medial claw of the hind foot. Now, does that change your diagnosis and your strategy? Absolutely. Okay. Taking the right photo matters. And I love our diagnostics today. A lot of times those like university diagnostic labs, they're encouraging us to send pictures with the case, even necropsy pictures. I love that. You can even submit them right on your submission form. That is so helpful. Like most of us, if you're like me, you're a very visual person. I can listen to words, but man, if I didn't have this up here today, y'all be lost in my talk. Guarantee it. The tilt tables, I think, are just really important. These are some bounded animals at the feed yard, and just being able to. This is I encourage you. This is a makeshift deal. We kind of made this deal, and this guy came here. He does a lot of club calves, and got him convinced to come to the feed yard and bring his equipment to the feed yard just so we could clean up some laminitic animals that we needed to clean up before they went on to Tyson. Because Tyson is not going to take that animal otherwise. We fix them so that sometimes they can, and they can ship them right away and get them gone. Because shipping one like that to Tyson is a lot more valuable than shipping one to a regular market. You're 50 cents on the dollar on a regular market. In today's market, it's $1.87 versus 90 cents. It matters. I showed you this one already. That's the locomotion score 4, severe lane after toe amputation, 48 hours after. That's at same now. And obviously a lot of bedding. What's that diagnosis? Have you guys seen this before? Quiet. That's hairy heel work. Front side of the foot, free lesion. When we see these in the pen today, that's when we start foot bathing. If we're foot bathing at the time of cavitation and seeing those lesions, we're late in terms of prevention and treatment for that. I mean, Dr. Dorte will tell you, and she'll challenge you, that foot bathing at the time of cavitation on that animal, you're not healing that animal. And keeping that animal in the pen is the worst shedding animal you can keep in the pen. That animal should probably go to slaughter. Be done. So today, when we see these, we will actually foot bathe pins every 45 to 60 days. We start seeing that. And I will always argue today that we create digital dermatitis, or we don't create it, but we propagate it or we expand it in the feedlot because of hygiene and pin surface issues. But we were not the creators of it.
The creators of it come from the ranch. These are fairly new arrivals. It's there. You guys just don't know it.
Specifically on the foot point. Right there between, yeah, okay, gotcha. The little ball there is, got it, okay, cool. Wanted to clarify. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Bullseye. Bullseye.
You can feed these pins and do no preventative action, and they may or may not blow up at the end of the feeding period. But I would tell you 9 times out of 10, they will.
Were they quite lame at that
Stage, no lameness, 0.
Just see it.
Maybe, I don't know what I did there. I might have screwed it up. There you go. Right there. So there's a drain underneath there, underneath the chemical, and you can lift that plug right there, and then all of that goes out. And then if, as far as if we need to say if we're not using it, we're just using it as a normal alley, they need to go in and they can scoop it out really quick. They can scoop it out.
It looks like copper sulfate.
What's that?
It looks like copper sulfate.
That was, no, that was not copper sulfate. That was, oh, I think of the name of the product. We were testing it at that time. It was blue. Huh? Something like that. God, I can't remember.
Basically copper sulfate with an acid.
Yeah, this one I knew didn't have copper sulfate with it. Yeah. It was, I know it was in a pouch and you could throw it in and, Dragonhide is what the name of it was. And we didn't have no success on it. Other than it was great because, we knew that the animals went through, because they all have blue feet for a couple days. So we knew which ones did not get the product, but all of them got
Is there something you do on the ranch or without building a trench like this to get
it.
a?
You can, so in emergency situations, so is there something that, you can build on the ranch that's not cement or, something like that? Yeah, you can, emergency situations, if you have to foot bathe really quick, and we've done it even at the feedlot, we will dig basically something like this, and we'll line it with a tarp and put the chemical in.
Do you have like a pre-bath where they clean their feet?
We don't,
You know?
as long as we're getting, so, the question is, do we have a pre-bath, before the chemicals? We don't in the feedlot. And typically if we do it on a cow-calf, we don't either. I've asked Dorte if that's important. Obviously clean feet is important, so you get, but you also argue that sending them through water, first before chemical there's always that absorptive, phase and getting the foot wet. So she was always told me in the feedlot anyways, is that if you're gonna get it wet with chemical, don't get it wet with water. So that's why we've gone to having the animals at least get single foot in twice in the bath as they walk. So length of that space is important. And let me see if this, and put two side by side and then put two more in front. I think they're about 7 feet long, something like that. Those baths are, I can't remember. Have you used them? The little foot bath plastic ones? Anybody? Yeah, I think they're 7 foot, something like that. They're probably like 4 foot by 7 foot.
Or in theory, like 1 cow length.
Yes, yeah. And so maybe only 6 foot even. So they'll put, they put 2 of those lengthwise and then 2 side by side and that's them going through. And some people say, well, we can't get our cattle to do something like that. This is the advantage of, this is like what I tell you, like Tom Nossinger, myself, or Bud Williams will teach you is how you do this. And you do it effectively. And like in this one, I don't know if there's, there's some whistling, I know in the background, but that's about it. So.
How is the formaldehyde handled post-use?
So, in our feedlots, we have that all drains through into the sediment basins that are eventually going to the water holding facility, which is where some of the manure ends up, but most of our manure ends up in settlement basins that then are cleaned out. The formaldehyde will be evaporative in terms of atmosphere wise, and then it will also be basically destroyed with excess manure. And so it is one of the safe safest products that way environmentally. However, you have the human side of that. And so when we do formaldehyde, we have safety trainings for all of our yards that use formaldehyde, meaning that we talk about goggles, gloves, long sleeves, water resistant coats and those things. We don't want to, and we talk to them about the carcinogenic effects of formaldehyde. We also talk to them about the benefit, like if you need to embalm somebody, you can. That's just a joke. So that's my sarcasm humor. But we do talk about those things that making sure that they're safe when they use it. Because all of them know, typically, when you recommend it, their first thing is they know that it's probably an embalming agent. They also have heard from others that it is cancer causing. And so those are literally some of the first things, and not all the crew does, but there's somebody usually in the crew that knows, and they're worried about their safety. And so we always visit with them about that, and that our intentions of using this product is not to create harm to you. But is that, if you think about disinfectants and that, we always talk to them about how many of you are, using Clorox or disinfectant wipes at home and not using gloves, right? I shouldn't say Clorox, but there's other disinfectants that, they're all caustic, they're chemicals, and they can cause skin burn and things of that nature. So, we're doing this as a service, and it's a service, it's the best treatment for the cattle. We've tested multiple products. We have yet to find anything better than that, and we will be fine using it as long as we use it in the right. And so we go through that whole presentation as well. That's always important to do.
What would you use to disinfect a pit barn? A pen in a pit barn?
We have used Clorox. You mean the pit itself, or
No,
just
no,
the surface?
The
Yeah,
slats.
Clorox. We've done that. We put that in a sprayer and just sprayed it down topically and let it sit. And we don't wash it down after that. They're doing some cool stuff with the deep pit barns today. I mean, and get back to facilities, but like NutriDrip is doing some stuff up in Minnesota with basically separating the solids from the pit, the screw press, and then they also have gotten those to where through that screw press we can get the liquids separated completely off. That can go through a drip irrigation system, which is just completely subsurface. That's full of nitrogen, and then the solids are full of phosphorus and sulfur or potash, which is hard to get if you're in the farming world today, and I farm as well, so I understand that one. And then on the pit itself, we can change the function of the pit from an anaerobic environment to an aerobic environment by putting hoses, air hoses on the pit floor, and you pump air through that, and then that changes that to an aerobic environment, but then it also decreases, almost eliminates methane gas coming off, as well as changes it so that it doesn't have an odor. So you can literally almost eliminate the odor of that barn by doing that. It's cool stuff. It's expensive, but through Equip, there is benefit to doing it. Like they'll almost pay for some of that stuff. So take advantage of it. Because if you don't, somebody else will. So, okay. You want to break one more time, and then I don't know what time is it. 10:30. We're in perfect time. I think that next one's going to take. So the next one, hopefully, will be somewhat interesting for you. It'll be and it'll be probably my worst presentation, just so you know. But it'll be on late day on feed deads and what we deal with today. And I'll just give you some stuff that I learned for this last week at the meeting, as well as what we learned through our data. And so I really just stick to 15 to 20, but I changed it on you there. But when you actually go back about 13 years, and on past from that, that's true. Higher average daily gain. That's really true, especially since 2019. We've really gotten these animals with genomics and genetic performance of the animal. You all have done a great job in terms of just producing an animal that really convert and really pack on pounds. That's really important. They're trying to be more efficient. Higher outweights. We're implanting cattle today, terminal implant, that we would have been fabricating 20 years ago. You know, we're re-implanting 1,200 pound steers today, and they still got 90 days to go. The other day I was at a yard and was in the hospital. This animal had 7 weeks to ship, and it was 1,810 pounds. 7 weeks to ship. Yeah. Well, you know what we chose. Ship it. He's fat. We did a bad job at sorting. Let's just be done. Right? He's healthy enough to move. Let's move him. Do we really want to risk an 1,810 pounder and look at this, the length of time of stay that's still there at 7 weeks and say, I think Draxon or Mackerson can fix him. That poor son of a gun's gonna die of a heart attack in his heat. You just don't let him go.
So how do you ship one like that? Are you blending them in? with
There
loads
is
or-
because of what we're shipping every day. So that's those bigger yards where we can just move things up. Okay. Higher conversions. And when I say that, that's like higher conversions in terms of feed to gain is improved overall. I mean, we used to have cattle that were in the upper sixes on a feed to gain basis, and today we have some that were in about 5.2. So 5.2 pounds for feed for every pound of gain. That's fantastic. You know, we're not chickens yet. But I don't know if we'll ever get to a chicken being 1-to-1, but we'll be close, right? We keep moving the target. That's good. Higher intakes. We have cattle today. I had a pen of cattle last year that them things were eating, I think it was 52 pounds as fed. I want to say if you convert that back to 65% or 62% dry matter, I have to do the quick equation, and I'm Polish, I can't do that as offhand, but that gives you the idea of the dry matter intake, what those cattle would consume. And they were just packing it away. I don't know where the heck they were putting it, but they looked like they had more room to go. It was fantastic. Lower room and pH level. I think that's really actually important. Lower room and pH. The longer cattle are on feed today, the pH continually falls in that rumen as well as in the hind gut. We always talk about ruminal acidosis, and I'll share some stuff with you from Greg Penner, Dr. Greg Penner up in Saskatchewan today that he showed that that not just ruminal pH that matters, it's hind gut pH that matters, and the hind gut inflammation that matters in terms of gut leakage issues. I think that's important. Technologies. When I talk about technologies, it's like our implants. You know, obviously since July 1, we've had to kind of change how we do things there, and from a legal standard and so forth. But you talk about them, you talk about beta agonists and all the things that we've put in there. Rumensin. You think about Rumensin. I think Rumensin was. You have to help me. Maybe you know. I don't know. When was Rumensin licensed? Was it like 1976 after Buggeleye? Something like that. I can't remember. You think about intakes back in 1976 and the animal that we fed back then versus the animal we're feeding today at the same dosage, same level. I know there might be people from the landfill or you, the farmer or whatever, they'll say, no, that's wrong. It's dose dependent and so forth. I get that, but it's the length of time that they're on it that I think matters. And we don't, and they talk about LD50 rates. What's the LD5 rate? Because I'm more worried, I'm not worried about killing 50% of them, I am worried about killing 5% of them. Okay? I'm worried about 50%, God, I hope we don't kill them that way, but we have through feeding years, so, but it doesn't matter. Feeding practices, going from single day feedings, Robbie Pritchard always preached this, and how many know Robbie Pritchard? Most of you should, in South Dakota. And so, fantastic person, I think he's a fantastic nutritionist, still gives talks today, still shows up the same way. Blue jeans, shirt, all hat. I don't know if he has the mullet still,
Mhm.
yeah, pretty fantastic. Might even have a chew in his mouth when he's talking, I don't know, sometimes he does. And so, about as real as you're gonna get per person, but you would always say, the disadvantage of feeding 2 or 3 times a day, you know what that disadvantage is? Fuel, labor. It's the opportunity to screw up the ration 2 or 3 times a day versus a single feed. At least if you're only doing single feed, you might only screw it up once for that pen that day. But if you're doing 2 or 3 times, you might screw it up 3 times in a single day. That could be devastating. And that's real. Right? And that is always stuck in my head. I'm always like, man, that's so true. Every time a human touches something, we have the opportunity to, I won't use the word I normally use, but we have the opportunity to really screw it up bad. Okay? We're not that smart sometimes, even the smart people. Okay? Higher genetic potential with growth performance, and I kind of mentioned that. I think, and I'll kind of allude on that a little bit later here, but so where have we been considering morbidity pools? When we look at morbidity for all steers and heifers, seasonal highs and lows, we definitely have seasonal highs and lows. We're again coming into that time of season where we're going to be placing a lot of wean calves, hopefully wean, or there might be some asphalt wean calves. Those definitely give us higher risk, and then that risk carries all the way through the feeding period. So if you have high morbidity, high mortality early on, it's likely going to be double that of the last part of the feeding period, is what we were experiencing today. Okay, so that does matter. Morbidity for all steers and heifers average each year over the last 13 years. We've just known that over the last 13 years, our morbidity trend is going up. And you think about all the antibiotics and the things that we have today to help prevent illness, and yet we're moving the target up. No wonder why they're making the products cheap. They're figuring out that maybe they're not the end all answer. They're not working. Okay. And it's not that they're not working. I still say some of that has to do with how we're weaning and what our methodologies are, and what we're doing there. The share of the morbidity prior to the last 60 days on feed has been decreasing in some. So that's prior to the last 60 days on feed, where we actually see in our charts, we actually see a slight decline in just prior to that last 60 days on feed. So we pull heavy up front, and it slowly declines. Then we get to the last 60 days on feed, and it goes the opposite way. And that's unusual. It's like, why are they doing it? That's something that we need to learn. The share of the morbidity the last 60 days on feed, definitely. So this is just a morbidity chart. This is all from our data we pulled, but this is from 2009 to 2022. You can see the morbidity spikes. 2013, well, prior to that, 2009. Why we picked 2009 was kind of the years of the beta agonist coming to the market. And why we show this, just it's not so much beta agonist deal, because in 2013 is when Zomax was actually taken off the market. We actually had a drop in our overall morbidity. We thought, oh, that was the answer. It was the damn Zomax, right? Well, it wasn't, because Zomax has not been on the market. No cattle have been getting Zomax, and we're still fine. Okay. And so I'll have a slide in here a little bit, but I'll allude on it now. Blaming a single product for some of our results, we have to be careful about that. And we have to be careful about what we say and how we say it, so that we don't create an illusion that that was the problem. I always say there's not And I was talking to a producer yesterday, where we had, I don't know if you've ever seen flying scapulas. You know what I'm talking about? So it's where you have disarticulation of the shoulder scapula. And we actually had place this year that put cattle out on a pasture, breeding heifers, mind you. Half of them went to this one pasture, half of them went to another pasture. One half that went to the good pasture, no problem. The other half, but in 72 hours, we had almost 100% with subarticulation, disarticulation of the scapula. Weird. I was just there yesterday, and most of them have healed. We lost 50 of them in that deal that were so severe, we had to euthanize. So when we talk about problems, like that problem, I told him yesterday, you got to prepare. You're looking for one answer. You're looking for one culprit. It's not a culprit. We have grazed that pasture before. Everything is multifactorial. Not a single deal. The only thing that's a single deal is a gunshot. But that required multi-factors, somebody to get irritated, to grab the gun and shoot you. Still multifactorial problems. It wasn't the gun that shot, right? So my point of saying that is you have to understand, just because you can identify the bullet doesn't solve the problem. That likely was not the problem. Is that fair? I don't want to get into all political and silly, but at the end of the day, you have to understand. Mortality, same deal with mortality. Same things that we just talked about morbidity, we see with mortality and deaths. Same exactly. What's weird about that, again, you can see going up to 2013 with prior to the Zilmax dismissal, where we were at overall mortality. That's overall, this is prior to 60 days, and in orange, this is post 60. However, in saying that, once it was eliminated or off the market, and we changed the last 60 days of death loss? No. We thought that was going to fix our problem. It did not. Still hasn't. So that's where I come to this. We all thought that taking a single product off the market, pinpointing and pointing fingers at a technology was going to fix our problems. And it did not. Why? Because we didn't fully, in my opinion, we have not fully investigated or opened our minds to just, rather than just say, well, I got the answer, thinking and investigating the answer or the potential problem and actually trying to dive into the root cause. Because I still say that this is a multi-factorial. There's a lot of factors that go. So this is just a share of the morbidity and mortality prior to the last 60 days of feeding period to the last compared to the last 60 days of the feeding period. So when you see this, so again, prior to the last 60 days on feed for morbidity, and then the last 60 days, you can see how it's coming down, poles are coming down, poles are going up, flat. Same way with mortality. Mortality wise, comes down. This is over years. Okay. Then here, coming up. The morbidity difference, there's going to be a lot of charts here. Morbidity difference here between heifers and steers. We thought, well, is it a gender problem? Right? Is there a difference between heifers and steers? There is. I'll show you that here in a little bit. There is slightly on the heifers. And that's different. That's opposite. That's on beef heifers. That's opposite compared to dairy on beef heifers and steers. We actually see higher death loss in our beef on dairy steers than we do the heifers. You know why that is? This one I do kind of think we got that one figured out. Does anybody know why that would be? Especially in the early phase, startup phases, and it carries all the way through to the end. Colostrum. Why is it so hard that if we have these calves, and that calf allowed us to have milk. That we can't treat everything equal. But if you go to those dairies, those steers, and I've watched this, those steers are still the last ones to get colostrum of the day. The heifers always get it first. Go to one. You don't believe it, just go and go to multiple.
And that's a straight dairy or that's a beef dairy cross? Yeah.
Those, we primarily measure the beef dairy, but it holds true for the, how do they handle the true dairy steers? That was worse.
Yeah.
Right? Now they at least have something to sell, right? But my point of that is that we've got to get better in that area. I'm gonna start picketing and say there's gender inequality in the dairy. And I don't like how us males are being treated. Not the punching bags. So, my wife is here, she might. So, morbidity, heifers and steers, here you can see again, blue is, last 60 days on feed, prior to 60 days on feed, steers, anyway. We don't see much difference there. You see the incline, over the years, but we don't see a lot of difference between genders that way. But where we do see it, that's not this one yet. That's just kind of the same graph of that last chart. This is where we actually see it, is when you actually separate morbidity, heifers and steers, or mortality out. It's not quite, yeah, it's here, right? So if you look at heifers right here, in the last few years, you've seen the gap widen between steers and heifers in the last 60 days on. We're actually pulling less heifers than we are steers, and that's on a percent of population. So it's not like just total polls, that's percent of the population of heifers and this percent of population of steers. And that's weird to me, is why are we pulling, and this is what's really crazy. Then you look at mortality, heifers and steers. And now look at this, mortality in the last 60 days over the years. Steers. And then the morbidity, we were decreasing in bulls in the last 60 days on feed, on heifers, but we're increasing in deads. What's that tell you? And you can say, well, they're not pulling them. It's maybe a training problem or whatever, but I don't know that it's a training problem. That's one of the, and I'm just sharing this with you because we don't have all the answers to it. I'm just showing you what our data is showing. And one of the things I had a farmer rep state is that, MGA, that we still have heifers cycling that are being fed MGA. So is that impacting just the immune function and overall health of that animal? Is it increasing their propensity to die? I don't know. That's another one that Robbie Pritchard always told me. He says, you don't need feed samples to the lab if you're feeding heifers to see if your mix is right. If the heifers are right and your mix isn't right, you're not getting the feed mixed up right. He says it's a really simple test. Or he says you can do the packing peanuts in the mixing wagon and pack inside the sifter containers in the bunk. But he said on heifers, it's really simple. They're riding, getting mixed right. So maybe we're just not mixing our rations right. I don't know. Maybe we're making the loads too big. I see feed wagons today that have extenders on the boxes. Did you know that those extenders aren't supposed to be there? The box is actually calibrated to only fit what was supposed to be in that actual box, and we tend to overfill the load. How well does that load get mixed up? Very well. And we send feed samples in, and the lab says that everything is fine. But all I know, well, we have health issues. I don't know that that's fine. you know, if you're a firm believer like I am, I mean, if you can't blame the nut, then you're not trying. Nutritionist, that is. You know, so if you can blame them, but I don't blame them. What I always tell them is that we really have to look at, when we're trying to solve these problems, is what's the exposure rate? So, yeah, they're exposed to Mannheimia, hemolytica, Staphylococcus, all that stuff. That's great. You can name the bugs, good for you. But all I know is this cattle are exposed to the surface that they're standing on 100% of the day. They're exposed to the water 100% of the day. They maybe drink 40% of the day, or less. They drink their, you know, in their settings. They're exposed to feed 90% of the day. So I would probably look at those three things and try to figure like, where we're at. This year, mortality on the heifers the last versus steers. Again, I think you can see the last few days on feed how that gap is changing. And then morbidity again, versus mortality prior to the last days on the field. You can see again here on morbidity, our pulls, the gap is, we're pulling more steers and we're still pulling, but not pulling as many, but our death loss significantly different. Another one. Okay. Well, then we looked at, okay, is an average in weight. Maybe we're bringing in lighter cattle or something of that nature. Well, that's not true. Majority of our cattle have stayed in, you know, between that 700 and 750 pounds on heifers, and basically around that about 780 to 820 average on steers. That's been pretty consistent all the way since 2015. We were actually bringing in lighter stuff prior. We had better luck. That's weird. I thought it was going to be the days on feed, heifers versus steers. We have increased days on feed overall. I'll show you one here. I think it's the average daily gain. I'll show you one on that days on feed just to give you kind of perspective. It'll be a numerical number that's easier to reach me. But average days on average daily gain. Heifers have been pretty stagnant. You know, we've been probably around that 3.3, and we're doing some with our data today. We're doing some increased learning with that data in terms of actually predicting better days on feed with weather, seasonal trends. So that one of our hardest things for managers today is to predict days on feed of an animal. Believe it or not. You say, let's see, that's not real. That's real. Just ask them. Trying to find the perfect out time for that animal. When is it truly done? Because 5 days matters. You can get them gone 5 days earlier, or you might save them. Yeah.
Yeah, the chart on the weight gauge up there. Yeah, that up there. Do you have a chart on the age of the animal?
Age of the animal? No, we don't. Because we don't track that very well. That's a good question.
Because you're getting, our wean weights are getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
Our adult animals are getting higher and higher, and we gotta get bigger machines now to handle these cows that are coming in.
No, I agree there. Yeah. So I like when we look at average in weight today, we're making the assumption we don't keep checking. We don't know the age. Why don't we know the age? Oh, we don't have any records to know.
Right.
You know, we don't have that, and we have to make the
I think
assumption.
that's part of it.
It could be. It
If
could
you're
be.
younger animals, they're the fact
Less
that
days on the feed per life.
More death loss.
Yeah. So you're saying is bringing in a 14-month-old animal that by the time he leaves at 150 days on feed, he's a lot older than that young animal in place that we still ship. It's
But when you select from one thing in your genetics, right now we've been selecting for rate of gain, but we haven't been selecting for immunity.
correct. And I think that's where, like in my prior talk about trying to understand genomic host factors as well as pathogen factors. It's going to be really important. I agree 100%. Yeah. So there needs to be, we need to have a better understanding of innate immune function of triggers. Because we don't know what triggers things very good today. And a lot of that is because we don't have good case definition. As I always tell people today, there's no antibiotic in the world that is currently labeled to treat hot rectums. But yet that's what we continually use to decide if we're going to treat an animal. And that's where our profession is today. And before you know it, my wife sent me, when she teaches, she sent me one of these the furries. God, I hope I don't offend anybody on the online deal, but where a furry parent is wanting their child treated by the veterinarian. So maybe there's a different professional we could treat. So need more money. So average outweight, there you go. Outweight. So in weight has been stagnant, outweight is increased. Part of that is because maybe there's elevated days on feed, but elevated performance. This is what's really interesting to me is that, so we do feed cattle longer. So when you look at feed to gain ratios for the live animal, we know that as an animal gets bigger and fatter and older, they become less efficient. You know, so if you didn't have technologies in that animal, if you were 1,000 pounds, you would convert at a 10-to-1. If you're 1,100 pounds, you convert at 11. If you're 1,200 pounds, it's 12-to-1. It's an inverse relationship that way. If you put technology in them, you can get them to convert at a 6-2. Okay, but in that last phase, they're actually fairly inefficient. However, what is efficient in terms of conversion is carcass conversion. We actually know that we actually put more pounds of carcass on in the last 60 days or last 90 days. And because we've gone from a live basis of marketing cattle to a hot carcass basis of marketing cattle, and longer. Because we know we can and we know we get paid to do it. You're selling in the meat, you want a heavy carcass and you want good yield. So when you do that, you're increasing length of time, you're increasing size and mass. I just know that if I ate like that and I was that fat, I would die. I would, right? But that's an interesting thing. So that's just average conversion. That's live animal conversion there. That's not carcass. Average as fed intake, you can see where you can see where cattle are consuming more heifers and steers. And again, that's where I go back to the technology that I know it's dose dependent, but if we're not getting our mixes correct, are we creating some LD5 issues with some of our technologies? I don't know. I'm just asking that. I don't know the answer. Average dry matter intake, heifers and steers, you can see again, phenomenal performance in cattle. We can really get these things to converge. This is the stuff that I highlighted here. So average days on feed, 2012 to 2014, 2020 to 2022 on steers, just the difference. We're 121 pounds heavier than we were back then. Today, days on feed, I should have. I don't know if we didn't have the total number up there as far as what we looked. I apologize for that. I can promise you it's in the millions on that stuff there. So right now in our database, on a daily basis, we have about 3.2 million head coming in on a daily basis. Just so you know, that's what we look at today. So average days on feed, we're plus 5 days on feed. Between those days, that time frame, plus 8 on the heifers. So when I seen that, I was like, you're looking at a bar chart, it's like, well, there's maybe a difference there. Then you look at this chart, like, seriously, I'm only feeding them 5 days longer. That's it. I thought it'd be longer than that. I thought I was going to see like a difference of 20 days or something like that. And it's not, it's just 5 days. But 5 days matters, right? At the end of the day, I say, for every second you're breathing, you're just closer to death. So take every breath as if it was your last. Love it. Okay. Mortality rate, look at that, the difference, 0.2% total mortality rate, mortality rate prior to the last 60 days on. This is what's stunning to me. Look at that difference there. So 0.2% total mortality 0.13% of that's coming in the last 60 days on feed. And again, that's when we should be cruising. We should have no problems there. That's frustrating to see. Heifers, not as obviously inverse or terrible, but also not as good. Higher mortality in general. Late day on feed, mortality by diagnosis. Why this is important, some people have asked, well, what are they dying from? Well, 2022, the average, 2018 to 2022, 29% of them were BRD cases or diagnosed as BRD, 25 and below. That's frustrating in itself. AIP, 18%, and I'll talk a little bit about this a little bit. AIPs, important. Acute interstitial pneumonia, there's nothing acute about acute interstitial pneumonia. That is like ARDS in people. Acute respiratory distress. There's a lot of things that causes ARDS. And if you look at it, by the time that a person would actually show ARDS, they're already 5 to 7 days into the event. And I think cattle are the same way. Heart failure, that's just like infectious or mechanical. You still see our musculoskeletal are 12%. That's frustrating in itself. I would say that's man-made creation right there. This one is important because where is the late day mortality by diagnosis occurring on a month-to-month basis? You can see that on BRD, respiratory disease. We're pretty, throughout the entire year, we're pretty steady. You can see on blows, we're pretty steady overall. We had this little bit of dip in June and July. Surprises me a little bit, honestly. But I think some of these, June and July's, might be getting diagnosed as other, because you can see down here, so it's not the market, but like heat stress deaths and stuff like that, that look bloated, that they die in the heat. So I think some of our diagnoses get taken away from bloats and go into maybe some heat stress issues. But the one that's really surprising to me, and it's very typical, is the AIPs. You can see that basically starting in May and going all the way to about October, we have AIP season. What brings that on? I think heat brings that on. I think acidosis brings that on. I think dust brings that on. There's a lot of things that bring that on. And it's not, by no means is it acute. Now, the one thing I would always say on all of this, I talked to Dr. Dan about that this morning, is that this would be better information here is if we knew that all of these were posted and confirmed. Now, we can go into our database because we do have yards that post every day. And so we could, and that's what I talked to them about this morning. So we need to go into those yards and look at the true confirmation. You can say, well, who's diagnosing them? Veterinarian or lay people? What's lay people? But I will promise you, them people, they see more than you. I'll guarantee it, because they know they have me as a veterinarian. And so, not very good. I've said that before. We do our best, but they are really good at it. And if they don't know, they clip pictures and they send them to me. I was telling my wife, if somebody ever steals my phone, they're just going to be looking at it like, holy Jesus, this is a sadistic person. A whole bunch of dead animals on his phone. Oh, it's crazy. Needs psychological help. But late day death loss here from region. I mean, that's important. There is some region specific. So Southwest Kansas, Southeast Colorado, believe it or not, is not for heifers and for steers, not great. And you think about drought in these areas, that's real. So fetal programming, how does drought, dust, all those things impact things? I think that matters. Length of haul to our yards. What's really frustrating to me is that even like our Nebraska ones, not as good as we should be. I think we should be better. And then this is basically the first one there was from June, July, August of 2020 to 2022. This next one is closed out during all months of the 2020, 2022 season. So, but you can see there's the seasonal impact that heat does have on those regions. We know today, the one thing that we do know is that we have pin mapping, a deal that we have created where we have droned the yards, measured pins, we've measured water tanks. And so we have square footage of pin space per animal and water space per animal as well. And when you get south of I-70, water tends to, one, it's not as plentiful. Like we're pretty blessed up in this regions where we do have plenty of water, groundwater. I don't know what it's like here, but I know like where we're at, we have bountiful water. We're really blessed that way. You know, we have wells that'll do 1,100 to 1,500 gallons a minute. And Ogallala Aquifer, it's as fresh as night and day, night is dark, so it's really, really good stuff. And so, but I noticed when you go down south of that, it's not. And water tank space declines. So one of the things, even like on facility designs today, when we build new pens and they want to do the same amount of water that they've done 40 years ago, I always ask them, why wouldn't we put more water in? Like, what's the limiting factor to intake? Water. They don't drink, they don't eat. Crazy. Okay. Management changes over the last 20 years. 2003 is when the beta agonists started coming out. Muscle redistribution basically is gut shrinking and muscle building, and what that does to an animals and so forth. Not saying that those are bad. Those betas more efficient in our feeding, and if we're talking about a carbon footprint, that's real. That's something that we have to think about. We went from 2 ration systems starting in about 2002, 2003. More cattle sold on a carcass basis. I said that earlier. Is that we're feeding them longer and bigger and so forth because it is efficient to do it on a carcass basis, not on a live basis. Distiller grains. Why is distillery grains? If there's anybody on here but have people in the ethanol industry, they're going to look at that and go, "Why is he blaming distillers grains?" Because everybody always looks at this stuff. Well, you blaming us? No, I'm not blaming you. Just putting some facts out there that things have changed. But why is distillers up there? In our smaller yards, in our large yards, we get distillers in every day and it's gone every day almost. In our smaller yards, we get it and it sits and it bakes in the sun. What do you do with a wet, fermentable, very soft, high surface area product that's baking in the sun, and then we're going to feed that? What's in there? Oh, mycotoxins. What does that do to the gut? Makes it leak. I told the yard yesterday where I was at, we were talking about weaning preparation where I was out there yesterday, is, when we see loose diuretic or diarrhea calves, and we say, yeah, that's normal, they're going through a ration transition, or they're just starting on feed, their intake's just finally building, that's normal. That's not normal. What do you all do when you have diarrhea? You just go, it's normal. No, most of us are sissies and like reaching for Pepto-Bismol or some antacid or something, right? But yet we'll look at the calf and go, no, that's normal. No, it's not. When you see loose stools, watery eyes, and the animal's not cleaning their hide as much, is that respiratory disease? Or is that sepsis? You would know on me, knowing that I'm a type 1 diabetic, you would know on me by looking at my eyes if I was going low. I would say the eyes of all animals, including us, tells everything about your health and your health status. If you're watery, crusty, and you just came out of Memphis, Tennessee to Starkville, Mississippi, like I did last week, and the Bermuda grass was pollinating like the son of a gun. I'm not exposed to Bermuda grass. And I went down there and I told my wife, I hope they don't think I got COVID or something. We're not gonna let me in that sheep reversing. I was sneezing and sniffling and coughing, and I'm still recovering, getting that stuff out of my system today, but eyes will tell you everything. And we have to pay attention to that cattle, and eating moldy feeds is not right. Just because you did a sloppy job of putting up your fermentation pile, go to a dairy and put up a pile like you would put up at the feedlot, and go to the dairy and see if that'd be acceptable. They'd run you off the place. Like, don't you know what that cost you to put that stuff up like that? We measure it 2 to 3 times a day in milk production. You don't do that. No, if you want cattle to perform at a high rate and stay healthy. Feed stuffs matter. Like I said earlier, look at what they're exposed to. Think about that. We gotta be better than that. I mentioned the Rumensin and those things in the 1970s. It's around that 76, 73 area, I think, is when that was approved. Labor issues. We can beat this deal up till we're blue in the face on labor issues. And I'll be one of them right with you sometimes. But one thing I do always tell our clients when they're complaining about labor issues is, I said, well, JBS is hiring people and they're getting people hired. What are you doing to recruit? And if you're not out actually actively recruiting today and being positive about your industry, well, we won't get anybody to work for us. Right? You have to want to go to war, and those kids voluntarily sign up. And they get them. I think our industry is safer than that. Right? We have to actively recruit. And we have to be fair. What I always would tell all corporates today is that you flying around on your jet and telling people you ain't got enough money to pay labor equally, shame on you. You know, I've heard Britney Spears, or not Britney Spears, what's the country music? See, Taylor Swift. There we go. I don't like her that much. I mean, it's just personal. Not a huge Taylor Swift fan, but I mean, she does a lot, right? And she attracts a lot of people. I just heard she gave her all of her truck drivers $100,000 bonus. Well, if I'm a truck driver, who am I going to go follow? I'll tell you that much right now. I mean, all of a sudden I become a huge Taylor Swift fan. I mean, I am a fan right there. So she pays people when she's successful. I think that's fair. You know, shade and dust exposure, I think is awesome. This is the lowering of the rumen pH, you know, through the entire feeding period. This is from the Australian Veterinary Journal in 2021, but they put rumen boluses in and they track these animals, and you can just see that the scatter graph there, that the trend line coming down from day 0 to 100, 150 days on feed, rumen pH continually falls the longer they're all on feed, no matter what. And what drives that is intake. As I showed you earlier, dry matter intake has been increasing. If dry matter intake increases, rumen pH inversely falls. Why does that matter? Well, it mattered, and we had a nutritionist say, you know, you had up here that on the average, right there with that dry matter intake, is that, you know, we were at, this is only at 12, mind you, but that's kilograms per day. Also, so that should be like 24, 24.2, something like that. But, you know, you look across for about 5.85, something like that. He goes, I guarantee you that's wrong. Since we're closer to like 5.2 on a rumen pH. Well, we're getting them even more acidic than when you think we're getting them. You know, and so that's important, I think. And then this one I think is really important too. When you look at ruminal pH right here, and then you look at the gray line right here is basically a ruminal they wanted to, basically, this is the startup phase, this is the finishing phase, and how, days on feed, as far as length of time and ruminal pH continually falls. Why that's important is that when you look at like from the summertime, sometimes those areas where we're getting our peak, acidic environment is sometimes in June and July and August in some of these big fat cattle. And why that matters then is when you look at that in terms of leaky gut and heat stress. I think about like what we just went through 2 weeks ago in Nebraska, and basically is for about a 3-week period down in Kansas with heat stress on cattle. And we have our most acidic environment. How do cattle get rid of the acid? Should ask that. They breathe it out. And now you're trying to breathe in a very hot environment. What happens to breathing patterns when you're hot? How do you effectively eliminate carbon dioxide? Full breath. Are you very efficient when you're doing it? You're not. You're actually making it worse. You will become more acidic as a result of panting. So now you have ruminal pH because of feed in there that were already acidic. Now you have panting. There's no way those animals can effectively get themselves back to normal in that state, in that time of season, without the helps of shade, bedding, water, all the things that you have to do to help make that animal comfortable.
Have you used any products for Lactic Pro?
Mhm.
I mean, is that?
Yeah, so there's-
these feedlots.
We don't see the benefit of lactic, and I say this, and there might be somebody on there that disagrees, but in our observation and measurement, we don't see much benefit up front. Where we do see the benefit is in the terminal implant phase, and we feel like doing that when you're taking cattle away from feed and water. And this is what Dr. Greg Penner from Saskatchewan showed. So I'm excited about that. I'll just insert that right there. What he showed is that when cattle fall off feed, we've always known it in the poultry, when chicken falls off feed for a day, part of a day, how impactful that is on gut leakage and gut health. We always suspected it in cattle. Cattle are the same. He actually showed it. He actually decreased intakes by 25%, 50%, and 75%. Over, I think it was like a 12 or 24-hour period. And they had them started on feed for 14 days on that ration that they were on. And then from that point forward, they had a normal group that they just continued to fed. They had the group that they declined 25%, the group that they declined 50%, and the group that they declined 75%. And definitely they showed in that deal that the increase in innate immune response, ruminal acidosis occurred and hind gut acidosis occurred. And why, I don't know. I can't explain that. He would have to explain that. But if you ever get a chance to go listen to his talk, I would really encourage you. I mean, he has some really good stuff. And I'm glad they're looking it up and they're investigating. Because it's actually starting to make sense of how gut health and leaky gut and sepsis. And he looked at even like the LPS, the lipopolysaccharide, just the gut flora and that increasing and the release of lipopolysaccharide in that system, creating the sepsis was huge. So when we talk about like weaning calves, you go out there and you wean these calves today, and you go up and you gather, and you don't even allow those calves to nurse that morning before you go separate. And then you wait 6 hours, they're off feed for 6 hours or longer. Why do we have sick calves? They were healthy the day before. It's more, and we talk about the stress, and it is the stress of being away from mom and finding new feed, but maybe we should adapt to the feed before we actually separate. You can say, well, I don't have the ability to do that. I think today, honestly, with the technologies that are coming, like with vents and stuff like that, I can see, for example, where people can collar calves and you can actually create invisible fence zones that actually create the separation for you. That's where I would encourage us to go with young people.
Well, you'd be encouraging using a product like Black Pro on a preconditioning. Like.
Yeah, I probably would, honestly, because of the ruminal flora. And I think that's what we see at terminal implant findings is that those cattle are off feed sometimes we try to not have them off feed longer away from their pen longer than 2 hours. But I know that sometimes it lasts 3 hours and sometimes even longer than that, we make mistakes. And so as a result of that, I'm sitting there going, well, maybe that's what's helping us. We're actually utilizing, kind of a microbacteria, if you will, or, lactopro or lactobacillus bacteria and actually trying to really feed that rumen so that they can back adapt to starch is where, I don't know where they left off because that 2 to 3 hours away matters. That 2 to 3 hours of handling and stress matters.
Like, do the feedlots that use Lactapro, or they put it in on arrival? Or is it?
Most of them now we're doing, at terminal.
Because it
does-
does. Okay.
Yeah, because it does cost us, it's $3, a little bit over $3 a head. So, it's gotta,
But you don't do anything upon arrival.
no.
Okay.
No. No, and what Dr. Greg Penner showed is that you can correct some of those insults through long stem hay. And I was so proud of him for finally saying it because we get beat up from nutrition groups, sometimes about using long stem hay in the middle of the feeding period. I'm like, but he will also tell you, don't use it too long. Like he would tell you 3 to 5 days max and get them on energy because that calf needs energy for immune function. The hay does not have enough energy. You gotta have some energy, therefore, some protein in the mix.
A lot of these factors go back to areas floating around a few years ago. That we have genetically and artificially increased the muscle mass on our cattle. At the same time, respiratory capacity, circulatory capacity has not increased.
Yeah, so, but here's the neat thing about that is people have looked at that. And there's feed yards that have looked at it now and, like Neogen have their congestive heart failure genome and that they can identify. And I think that's good. But there's one corporation out in the Pacific Northwest that are literally looking at it on the beef on dairy side specifically, but looking at it and actually going to the fabrication plants and looking at heart size, lung plug size, and then they're going back and they're taking some physical measurements and they're looking at that in terms of, too large would be bad or not large enough maybe would be bad. So they're looking at that and then they're going back and they're actually trying to find those genetics and selections and they're really, it's not that we're not looking, it's a process. And it takes time to change. I always tell people we're not chickens. We can't reproduce just boom. We're not rabbits. And so it takes us multiple years to get there. But I feel like we got people starting to think in the right direction finally. Yeah. And what I appreciate about that is, I was always taught, and Bev and I were always taught that, if you're gonna walk the walk, you gotta talk the talk. That old bacteriology lady there at K-State and it's just pounded in you. You gotta know the names of the bugs. You gotta know the names of the bugs. Well, over the years, I'm trying to forget the names of the bugs. Because they keep changing, and then quite honestly, they're all normal commensal bugs. So I'm sitting there going, okay, if they're normal commensal, and the system deals with them on a normal basis, everyday basis anyway, why in the hell did they turn on, and why were they able to create the problem? Well, they didn't create the problem. They're just there to help or to basically impact the problem, if you will, and be a secondary invader that is opportunistic and it helps worsen the issue that's there, but it didn't create it. Something else created it. And now we finally, I think, have people thinking in the right direction in terms of gut health. And I think that's on the people side too, is what we put in our bodies is kind of who we are at the end of the day, right? And so, you choose to eat a lot of candy and whatnot, well, then good luck.
So Kip, at the risk of opening up another rabbit hole, running trail. when you looked at those other charts you had, I mean, you went, a lot of them, you went back to '09, and
Yeah.
a lot of these trends seem to take off 13, 14. You know,
Yes.
that's corresponding with immense herd contraction and then herd replenishment. And that replenishment, from everything I've read and what I've seen, has been mostly with the newer genetics. So now that we're sitting at the cusp of, hopefully, if it rains, the cusp of another herd
Replenishment.
replenishment. With all of the things we've talked about here in mind, what are some of the things you see could be augmented as we go forward?
Well, I do.
Positive and negatives.
So two things, I think there, Jake, and I appreciate that, is that I do feel like we need to have better record keeping systems and that on our Cowcast. And you say, well, why would that matter? Well, if you don't measure things, how do you effectively change things? Because you maybe perceive that it's this way, and just like this, I mean, we perceive that it's all days on feed, or there's this gender deal or whatever. Well, it's really not that. You know, as you sift through it, it's not all those things. Not necessarily saying it's not, but it's proving that it's not. And so I think we have to be able to measure there, and then be able to follow more of that through. So basic data transfer to the end stage so that we can truly follow through. And see that, honestly, that today, that's what's the benefit of our beef on dairy. I will give that credit in that we are very consistent on our morbidity and our mortality on that group, mainly because we do impact the calf farm. We have not impacted all the dairies yet, but we have impacted some of the calf farms that feed our supply into our feed yards in terms of nutrition and health, this overall hygiene and whatnot. But that's helped us. It's not the total answer, but have to have those records to be able to come across. And so I think that's one. Genetics, I think we have to be smarter in our genetic selection, but there's still things that we don't. I love the things that Simplus doing in terms of looking at heart size, lung pluck area, those things. We have not done enough of that in our industry, I don't feel either. Because sometimes when you do just select for one thing, you give up 3 or 4 others that maybe a bit were good, you know, and so you have to be careful on what you select and what the impact of that selection means. But I do think that there's opportunity there. So in genomics, and then also I think the stuff that like Vito from Texas A&M or Vero, I think is what it's called, the acronym. Don't ask me to repeat what the actual words are. I just know it's Vero. But what they're doing with some of the genomics on pathogens and then hosts, I think that's going to be important, because we need to understand how innate immune functions trigger and why they trigger. Because maybe that'll give us an impact and start saying, okay, well, where can we intervene with something? Doesn't mean that we're going to maybe select for genetically resistant animals per se, but you at least know how these opportunistic bugs impact innate immune function or viruses. Then I think we can maybe have a, you know, and then, you know, where does vaccines go, and like how does that play a role? And I don't know. As you can tell through my talks today, I mean, I didn't talk much about vaccines or antibiotics. I talked a lot about genomics. I talked a lot about technologies that we are currently using that may be impacting some of the things that we do. Marketing, you know, I always say when you shift how you pay people, they'll create it, but it might not always be for all the right reasons. And so we do have to look at that as well. And then the other thing is environmentally. You know, you always find that I'm not the tree hugger, and I'm not the guy that wraps my arms around all this carbon stuff. I'm still trying to figure out how to get paid for this carbon stuff myself. And so, not big enough, I guess. I don't know. But in saying that, with methane and with you know, ammonia, like on those calf farms, most of the things I would tell you in those calf barns is ammonia gas coming off the surface. And I think the same even in our feedlots, when it's wet and moist, ammonia gas impacts respiratory function, it impacts cilia function of that respiratory tract and how it clears things and clears pathogens, just like the Bermuda grass did to me down in Mississippi. Destroyed me for a week. So, but how does all those things environmentally impact things? Well, again, it's not one thing, but summertime, obviously there's an issue in summertime. And we have to figure out that, like, when we build new facilities today, I don't think building facilities without shade or some form of heat mitigation, even if you're only, it's only beating you up for 3 months. You just ask some of our producers this last 2 weeks in Nebraska that lost cattle. Is that important? I bet they think differently on a $3,000 animal today that they just lost this last couple weeks. And so, some of those yards lost 1,500 in a single day. And now when I say that, I will tell you this, that myself in our group, we're very good at putting alerts out to our clients about delaying shipping, delaying arrivals, no processing, no animal handling. When you have clients that don't listen, I'm really slow to go write them a heat stress report for funding for the livestock indemnity program. That's self-induced. That's your fault. My dad always told me, you screw up, I'm going to allow you to screw up good. You ain't ever going to repeat it. It's going to cost you. I think some of these guys need that. You dealt the cost. I hate to say that. But need to be, I told our young veterinarians in our group, they know that I'm a really fun guy, very joking, but also fairly bold. I don't fire me because you don't like what I say. I don't care. Because I'm only going to tell you what I think is best for you and what I think is true. Can't be friends all the time. My best friends, I always tell people this, is that my best friend was Danny Daniel, but him and I, we had some drag out arguments sometimes, especially over that double versus single. And when I wanted him to start building the butt tub, and he wouldn't, he just wanted to stick with the butt box. And I says, Danny, I'm going to tell you this. I said, I'm going to draw them, and I'm going to take that design somewhere else. So you can I'll either work with you or I don't work together on that part of it. So he chose not to. So I said, okay, fair enough. And but we remain good friends. And my point of that is that good friends can do that. You're looking out for each other. You only pander to people that you want to fail. Okay. All right, that's fine. I didn't even make it all the way through, but I'm going to quickly do this. One thing I'm going to quick show you here. These are some of the mitigation deals the late day on PDES that we're doing today. So we have shade, recognize evidence of acidosis with hay for 3 days, 2 to 3 days is fine there. Lactic acid utilizers, competitive inhibitors, somewhere, I might be in that one right there where we would add the lactotro. What we're talking about there, timing of our TBA implants, extra water tanks, extra water is good, judicious use, genetic emphasis, are all things that we're looking at. But more importantly is we mitigate late day death losses, grain type of processing, the freshness of our stuff, pump space, pin space, cattle acclimation, flight cattle reimplant, so forth, probiotics areas. So those are all things that we're looking at. Yeah.
What about therapies?
That's a great question. So I'm not because of so what about therapies? Because of some ongoing research, can't give you all the details, other than say, it's an interesting product. And would I use it? Yes, I would. And for sure in certain situations. And there is a payout to it if it's used correctly. That's been proven so far. And we don't get when it comes to, well, I'll tell you guys this, just see, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, vaccines, antibiotics, those types of products, we get research dollars, research projects. We don't get, rebates, other than, we do get some from companies that help us with continuing education for our clients. But we don't discriminate who that comes from. So, if you, a pharma, Merck, whoever want to provide us some money to do those things, great, it goes to our clients, it does not go to our pockets. And I can promise you that, I'll give you my tax returns to prove that. So when I say things like that, just, you can ask me questions on some other products and I'll give you that answer too. But that product right now, I just tell you, yes, there's positive things. For sure. Any others? Is it okay? All right. Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging till the end.